Chapter 1. Snail Village. The night was quiet, and the moonlight shone through the trees, illuminating the ground. Zhang Dashan stood on the observation deck, surrounded by fences, thorny trees, and mud walls, forming the village's most basic defense. He wore a thin coat, and there was a short bow strapped to his back. Although it was early spring, the chill was bone-chilling. Zhang Dashan looked up at the sky. From the looks of it, there won't be any rain tomorrow. What will happen to the crops? And a few days ago, the Black Wind Bandits demanded that the village collect grain. Thinking of this, Zhang Dashan's face showed a hint of anxiety. Spring had come without rain, and the crops were on the brink of death. After the Black Wind Bandits, they still wanted to extort them. How could this be? Zhang Dashan was anxious, but suddenly, he was startled. He took out his short bow and listened intently, his eyes shining with vigilance. A moment later, the sound of hooves could be heard from afar. Zhang Dashan took a closer look and sucked in a breath of cold air. His heart was pounding, and without thinking, he bumped into the broken clock hanging on the observation deck. Not good, not good. The Black Wind Ridge Bandits are approaching the village. The sudden sound of the bell broke the silence of the village, like a bowl of water suddenly poured into a pot of boiling oil. Chaotic footsteps could be heard, and the lights were turned on. The village was alarmed. News of the bandits' arrival spread to every corner of the village. The elderly, the weak, the women, and the children in the village panicked. These bandits, we just gave them grain a few months ago, and they're here again today. A few women cursed under their breath as they ran away. Quick, hide the money and the women. The women and children were anxiously tidying up their homes, ordering their children to hide. The young men gathered at the village entrance with machetes in hand. Other than the ordinary villagers, there were a few others, led by the village chief, heading toward the village entrance. They were all strong, holding not machetes, but long knives and hunting bows. Village chief, over there. Zhang Dashan pointed, and several people looked over. Outside the wall, several bandits were approaching at a steady pace, laughing and chatting as they approached the village. As they got closer, the torches illuminated the bandits of the Black Wind Ridge. These bandits liked to wear black clothes, and there was a wolf embroidered on their clothes. That was why they could recognize them so quickly. A middle-aged bandit stood in the middle, and the two bandits around him seemed to take him as their leader. His face was thin, and he was dressed in black. Even though he was joking at this moment, under the light of the fire, his eyes still carried a cold glint, like knives, as if he was going to cut off a chunk of flesh from whoever he looked at. Ha ha ha, third brother, we spend most of our time on the mountain, so we only come to the Crouching Ox Village a few times a year. Looking at it today, the Crouching Ox Village seems to be very wealthy. The one who spoke was a burly man. He looked at the villagers who had woken up and climbed up the mud wall with a cold gaze. They can even build watchtowers and mud walls. Looks like we should ask them to hand in more food every year. What they offered last year is far from enough. There were only 3 of them, yet they were able to force the entire village to face a great enemy. Who else hasn't arrived yet? The village chief furrowed his brows and looked around. In a situation like this, fighting or not was one thing. All the men had to come out and fight, which was another. They're all here, aside from the widow of the Pei family. He's a scholar, and he's still sick. At this moment, the middle-aged bandit ran out from under the mud wall without any fear. He laughed at the villagers. You bastard, do you dare to shoot at me? A hubbub rang out in the darkness, before gradually becoming clearer. People were rushing about, and someone cried out, "The bandits are here! The bandits are here!" Listen up, villagers. Hand over this year's money and the village's beauties. We've just paid our taxes, so where's the money? Please, sir, cut the crap. Either hand over the money or shoot us to death. Let's see if we, the Black Wind Bandits, will flatten you and kill every last one of you. What was that sound? The young man opened his eyes. The sky was dim, and above him was a hanging beam made of old-fashioned clay tiles. He quickly scanned the surroundings. There were some cracks in the mud brick walls, and they were stuffed with some grass to prevent air leakage. There was also cold wind coming in. The windows were papered. Where was he in such a poor mountain village? Just thinking about it made his forehead ache and his mind went blank. It was 10,000 times more painful than a hangover, and it penetrated deep into his soul. The whole world was torn and melted like dough. His forehead broke out in cold sweat, and he panted heavily as he listened to the messages coming in from outside. "We can't fight, we can't fight. There are hundreds of Black Wind bandits. Just hand her over. Village chief, she's just an orphan girl. Sigh, sigh, I don't have the face to see her parents." The hubbub continued, and a feeling stimulated the survival instinct of the young man. He flipped over and got off the bed. His movements were not smooth, as if he had regained control of his body after being bedridden for a long time. He realized that his shoes were made of cloth, with 1,000 layers of soles. They were very small, and he was wearing a thin, gray robe. The material felt rough to the touch, like cotton and linen, and the holes were handmade. How to describe it? It was a Han costume that was mixed with the style of an ethnic minority. It was said to be a costume for a play, but it was very clean and starched. As he thought about it, he felt a sharp pain in between his eyebrows. The thing that was locked inside was about to come out, and the hubbub outside was still going on. "Miss Sue, open the door. Open the door. Sue-san. Even if you don't want to open the door today, you have to. Paizian next door is sick and can't protect you." The hubbub gradually reached the next door. It was chaotic, and everyone was talking at the same time. The words they spoke had a southwest accent, but the young man could instinctively understand them. A shadow flashed through the gap of the door, and the sound of footsteps sounded like there were about 20 to 30 people. It was a mess. He frowned and mumbled, "Are they filming?" Before he could understand the situation, he heard someone knocking on the door. The young man went to open the door, and his body felt refreshed. The muscles in his limbs were transmitting signals, and his movements were full of vitality that he hadn't felt for a long time. What was strange was that his vision was clear. It was as if he had taken off his gray glasses to see the world of rain. At this moment, he thought of something and looked down at the shoes on his feet. The feet in the shoes were white and tender. It wasn't his own feet, but the feet of a woman. What the? He touched his chest subconsciously and heaved a sigh of relief. His face turned strange, and he raised his hand to look at it. This was the body of a young man, and it was stronger. He had done farm work, and there were calluses on his hand. Perhaps he had held a knife before. He was stunned for a few seconds, and his eyes swept across the pile of firewood. A knife was stuck in the firewood, and the edge of the blade was as bright as snow. Pushing the door open, he could vaguely see the mountains in the distance. It was a small village, built against a hillside. There were villagers running around, and some of them were knocking on the door, trying to persuade a woman to come out. She did not come out. The aunts and aunts tried to persuade her. "Ye Sewer, you'll have a good life in Black Wind Ridge, don't be afraid." Why is there no sound? Stop talking nonsense with her. Ye Sewer doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. She's an outsider, and there's no one else in the house. Let's just break down the door and tie her up. Yo, she's even holding a pair of scissors inside. Shoo, lower your voice, don't startle the neighbor. That kid and Ye Sewer have an affair, and when he's hot-headed, he can do anything. He's a scholar. Transmigrated? A small worm slithered down from the bamboo leaves, and crawled across the face of the human-shaped youth. It did not treat him as a living person, and his mind was buzzing. At that moment, the discussion in the crowd seemed to have stimulated the girl next door. She sobbed softly, but her voice was very familiar. It passed through the crowd and the bamboo forest, and landed clearly in the youth's ears. Brother Yun. This voice became the key to the original owner's memory. Boom. I make a wish, to protect the person I love, to avenge the enemy who took everything from me, and to bring peace to this chaotic world of cultivators. Someone said softly, "The one who inherited everything from me, the system in your mind is very interesting. If you want to obtain my plum blossom, then complete my mission." 1. He felt a sharp pain in between his eyebrows, and his body stiffened. Even his breathing stopped. The moonlight shone on the bamboo leaves, and on the youth's forehead, a transparent shadow of the plum blossom appeared. One of the petals was faintly discernible, as if it was about to come out. No! Memories, so familiar yet so strange. Countless memories swarmed into his mind, until there was a flash of blood. His body trembled, and the youth subconsciously touched his neck, as he sank back into his memories. This was a long dream, a person's life. Just like himself, his name was Pei Ziyun. This was a world of Tao. The original owner was born with a spiritual treasure, but because of his ignorance, weakness, and hypocrisy, he wasted 5 years of his life. After much difficulty, he finally entered a Tao sect, but was betrayed by his senior brother. Countless memories flooded into his mind. Natural spiritual treasure? My golden finger was stolen, and I still have some spiritual roots left? Wish to be reborn? So I fulfilled my wish and came to the original owner's life 10 years ago? Time has turned back. His body was sore and his head hurt as if it was about to split open. Countless memories regrouped, forming a new soul. One emotion after another was added. There was love, hatred, despair, and anticipation. The person in front of him was Yi Su-er. Now you've been awakened by Yi Su-er? Yi Su-er's childhood sweetheart. After being separated for so many years, they met again in a sect with strict rules. They could not forget each other. The youth trembled in fear as he accepted these emotions, her past, her future, her body, and her soul. The memories continued to advance, and finally froze at the moment of death. The enemy was right in front of him, the plum blossom was connected to the root, and it bloomed in front of him. Lightning flashed, and everything turned into nothingness. The original owner had made a wish. Boom! Suddenly, a small white plum blossom appeared in front of him. It grew bigger and became a translucent information interface. It floated in front of him, and a few words appeared. Name, Pei Ziyun Authority. Nun, parasitic, race. Human occupation. Scholar. The youth looked at the skills, and it was blurry. But as he stared at it, it became clearer and clearer. It was a grayish-white symbol that looked like a book and a sword. The moment the symbol appeared, a line of words appeared in his mind. 4 books and 5 classics. Elementary, incomplete. Free cloud sword technique. Elementary, incomplete. Following that, a line of red words appeared on the information interface. Mission, save Yi Su. The translucent plum blossom remained motionless between the youth's eyebrows. After a while, the plum blossom disappeared, as if it had never existed. Chapter 2. The youth was in a trance as he remembered his original life. His name was also Pei Ziyun, but compared to this trash, he was a legend. At the age of 17, he quarreled with his family and took $10,000 to Shenzhen. He ate boxed meals and slept in the basement trading stock. A year later, he was self-taught and made a profit of $500,000. Then, he used his silver tongue to borrow $50,000 from a new friend and re-entered the stock market. Even though it was a bear market, he earned $3 million in 3 years, which was 30 times the profit. Later on, due to his success, he was threatened and had no choice but to enter a large organization as a trader and a white glove. There were many grudges and conflicts of interest, until the car crashed into him and he flew through the air. After a long time, the young man's gaze fell on the mission. Suddenly, a series of messages appeared. I'm already dead, but the original owner used some unknown method to pull me into this world. And this plum blossom, according to my memories, became a system? In the bamboo forest, the young man's eyes opened. He had already digested these memories and feelings. If I fail the mission, I'll lose the plum blossom? That's fine. It's just that the timing isn't right. The original owner was such an idiot. Just 3 bandits and they scared a village of 50 men into surrendering and handing over money. The original owner was a scholar, but faced with such a situation, he was helpless. Idiot. Although there are Taoist techniques in this world, who dares to go against them? Furthermore, the Great Sue dynasty has been established, and their focus is on the central regions. That's why they haven't been able to clear out the bandits yet. But this is only a matter of time. The Black Wind bandits can't grow their tails. The original owner was a scholar, a reservist. As long as he understood this, even if he didn't have the strength to fight a chicken, he would still have a way to salvage the situation. Now that things have come to this, what an idiot! If it were 3 days ago, I would have used the government to resolve this crisis. Now I can only fight with my life on the line. As a traitor, even though he wasn't a general, he had been on the battlefield for a long time. What he didn't lack the most was decisiveness in killing. The young man methodically tied up the clothes on his body and chopped down with a chopper. A green bamboo fell just like that. Not far away, the girl behind the door was still desperately trying to win a chance of survival for herself. She suppressed her fear and showed her weakest side to the men outside the door. She did not want to be some rich and powerful wife. She begged, "Uncles, please let me go. I will die if I go there, poo-pee-you." The young girl's pleading voice traveled into the bamboo forest and was heard by the youth. In just a few strokes, the chopper had sharpened the bamboo spear. He murmured, "The village will only hand over the goods at dawn. The villagers will not be at ease if we trade with thieves at night. There's still time." The youth's heart was calm. With a gun in one hand and a knife in the other, he ran straight out of the village. There was a mud wall in the village, but this kind of mud wall could only be used to scare the bandit. As a villager, he naturally knew that there were many loopholes in the wall. Climbing out was a simple task. When Pei Zi-yun crawled out of the mud hole, his entire body was covered in mud, including his face. As he passed by the pond outside the village, the moonlight was bright and shone on the pond, revealing his appearance. Seeing himself, Pei Zi-yun was not surprised. Instead, he was overjoyed. With the mud covering his face, other than those close to him, who would be able to recognize him. Just as he came out, he heard a few shouts. The Black Wind bandits were at the entrance of the village. Not only were they not afraid of the dozens of strong men in the village, they had even forced the villagers to hand over a few chickens. The village wasn't big. At this point, the moon was already in the west. At the foot of the northeast wall, there was darkness. It was a disguise. Pei Zi-yun held the bamboo spear in one hand and the knife in the other as he made his way to the entrance of the village. At this moment, at the entrance of the village, the Black Wind bandits were roasting the chickens in their hands. The chickens weren't big, and their feathers had long been plucked off. Their intestines had been pulled out and thrown aside. Using the knife they carried, they made a few cuts on the chicken's body and sprinkled some salt and chili on top of the fire. The chicken fat dripped onto the firewood, making a sizzling sound. At this moment, on the mud wall of the village, Zhang Dashan was furiously sharpening the wooden stick in his hands. The sharp tip of the stick had been shaved off, but it wasn't enough. Looking at the damned Black Wind bandits roasting the chickens, his heart was filled with fear and anger. These were the old hens he had reared at home and were used to lay eggs. But when the bandits were clamoring for chickens, someone went to get them, tied their legs, and threw them out. Zhang Dashan thought bitterly, and vented his anger on the wooden stick. He kept sharpening it and cursed, these bastards. As Pei Zi-yun neared the entrance of the village, he saw 3 Black Wind bandits. Looking at them, memories from his previous life surfaced. In the middle of the group was a middle-aged bandit. The other 2 bandits around him seemed to regard him as their leader. His face was thin and he was dressed in black. Even though he was joking, his eyes were cold. This man was the third leader of the Black Wind Bandits. He was the one who had kidnapped Yi Su-er from the village, and that was the reason why he had made such a mistake in his previous life. Looking at the bandit sitting by the fire, Pei Zi-yun touched his bamboo spear and crouched down. This wasn't the time to make a move, so he held his spear in place and hid. At this moment, a chicken had been roasted. It had the unique charred smell of barbecue, and was glistening with oil. One of the bandits who was roasting the chicken took the chicken and tore off a small piece. He placed it in his mouth and tasted it to see how it tasted. As soon as he tasted it, he realized that it tasted pretty good. The chickens in this village were plump, and had the chewiness of free-range chickens. It was delicious. He didn't dare to taste too much, and quickly offered it to the middle-aged bandit. The middle-aged bandit took the chicken and sniffed it. He tore off a small piece and threw it into his mouth to taste it. The aroma of the meat filled his mouth, and he couldn't help but feel his appetite increase. With both hands, he tore off a large piece of chicken leg and started chewing. After eating a few mouthfuls, he felt that it wasn't enough. He then took out a wine pouch from his robes, raised it, and took a big gulp. He then shouted, "This feels good." At this point, Pei Zi-yun had already hidden himself in the bushes. The trees were thick and dense. Above him were tall trees, and below him were thick shrubs. He hid in the shadows of the trees and prepared to assassinate the bandits. However, he was too far away. As he waited, Pei Zi-yun's hands tightened and loosened his grip on the bamboo spear and knife. The original owner only discovered the plum blossom 5 years later, and was able to cultivate it. Although he had learned martial arts and Tao arts, he did not know any of them. Although these bandits were mortals, how could they learn martial arts and Tao arts? Once the bamboo spear pierced through them, they would naturally die. These Black Wind Bandits gathered around the bonfire, and Pei Zi-yun suppressed his desire to kill them. 1 person could kill them, 2 people would be helpless, and 3 people could only run for their lives. Since he couldn't fight them head-on, he could only win with his wits. Pei Zi-yun couldn't help but think back to when he defeated the bandits. Suddenly, an incident surfaced in his mind, and he had a plan. In his previous life, he was weak and useless. He couldn't resist the villagers, and could only follow them from afar. He watched as Yi Su-er was sent out for the last time. When the village chief escorted her to the village entrance, the Black Wind Bandits came out from the temple not far away. He could still remember clearly that there were rooms in the temple that could fit a few people. These Black Wind Bandits had lit a bonfire at the entrance of the village, and had roasted a chicken to show off their strength. However, they still had to go to the temple to rest in the middle of the night. Pei Zi-yun laughed coldly, and had a plan in his mind. These bandits were truly despicable. He turned around to take a look, and then quickly retreated, not wanting to linger. The leader of the 3 Black Wind Bandits, who had been gorging himself on the food, suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. He turned his head around and looked in the direction that Pei Zi-yun had retreated to. He stood up with his knife in hand and walked over. "Third leader, what's wrong?" A bandit who was munching on a chicken's foot saw his third leader walking towards the forest, and followed him. The trees in front of him were all very tall, at least 3 to 4 meters tall. The trees covered the moon and cast a large shadow. The bandit looked over, but other than the shadows and the shrubs, he could not see anything. The third leader, the middle-aged bandit, felt suspicious as well. Just now, he felt as though someone was spying on him, but when he looked closely, he could not see anything. Thinking about this, he felt uneasy and did not say anything. He stood up and walked towards the forest, subconsciously lowering his voice and footstep. When he got closer, there was nothing. The middle-aged bandit did not relax and gripped his knife tightly. He had been a bandit for more than 10 years and had not died yet. As he got closer, he saw movement in the bushes. Someone's ambushing me? The middle-aged bandit's eyes turned cold, and he slashed down with his knife. Poochie! He cut something, and blood splattered all over the bandit's face, making him look extremely ferocious. The knife in his hand reeked of blood as he sliced through the bushes. At this point, the living creature under the bushes revealed itself. It was a wild dog, its body had been sliced in half, and it was twitching on the ground. Hey, you're indeed the third leader. Your knife skills are incredible, and it was a fatal blow. From the neck all the way to the body, half of it was sliced open. We'll be able to have a good meal tonight. The bandit who had just caught up smiled, and started to flatter the third leader. He held the wild dog in his hand, and threw it in front of the fire. He then skinned it. Dog meat can't be sliced and salted. We have to go back to the temple to cook it. The middle-aged bandit was somewhat surprised. He had thought that it was someone hiding in ambush, but it turned out to be a wild dog, which was a pleasant surprise. With that in mind, he sheathed his knife and wiped the blood off his face. He drank 2 mouthfuls of wine and looked up at the moon in the sky. The moon tonight was truly round. Pei Ziyun, who was watching from afar, broke out in a cold sweat. These bandits were indeed ferocious bandits. Although they weren't skilled in martial arts, their skills were simple and direct, and were learned from fighting. Fortunately, he did not attack them directly. Pei Ziyun calmed himself down and walked to the temple door. He looked at the temple before him. This was a temple of the earth. There were walls surrounding it, but they had not been repaired for a long time. There were a few holes in the walls, and it was a good place to kill someone. Pei Ziyun had just surveyed the terrain, and had prepared a few rope. All of a sudden, Pei Ziyun heard footsteps, and stopped in his tracks. He tilted his head and cupped his hands around his ears, and listened carefully. Outside the temple, the voices of several bandits could be heard. Pei Ziyun felt a tinge of regret as he turned around and disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 3. Third Elder, I didn't lie to you. In the past, when we were collecting grain, we stayed here. There are also wing rooms in this temple, and the surrounding 5 meters is empty space. There are a few rooms in the wing room, and we can sleep peacefully at night. Tomorrow morning, we can recharge our strength and go receive goods and women. After saying that, he laughed twice, appearing very wretched. The 3 of them walked into the temple. It was huge, except for the fact that it was broken. There was a hall in front and a few rooms in the backyard. In the middle, there was a flower bed. The flower bed had long been abandoned, and was filled with shrubs that were half the height of a person. The middle-aged bandit looked around, and realized that there were no signs of humans in the temple. He then instructed, "You keep watch and replace me at midnight. Be serious." After saying that, he swaggered into the wing room. He found that the bed in the wing room had long been broken, and there were only some dry straws piled inside. He made some firewood, piled them together, and lit a bonfire. He kicked away the straw around the bonfire and fell asleep. The night was cold, and the bandits who were keeping watch were not willing to suffer in the cold. They sat by the side of the fire and looked around in boredom. Pei Ziyun did not make a move, but waited quietly. First, he was waiting for the 2 bandits to fall asleep. Second, he was waiting for the bandit to get tired. At this point, under the light of the fire, the bandit's clothes were black and dirty. He was yawning in boredom. Suddenly, he looked like he was about to pee, and walked to the corner of the wall. Pei Ziyun took a deep breath, and stealthily moved forward. In an instant, he stabbed the bandit. Pooh! Although the tip of the bamboo wasn't sharp, it could easily pierce through a person. The bandit felt a sharp pain in his chest, and looked down to see a bamboo spear piercing through his chest. His mouth twitched and he was about to scream. At this point, a hatchet sliced through his throat, and with a piu-chi sound, it sliced through his windpipe, throat, and carotid artery. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Pei Ziyun could clearly see the bandit's body bounce up, and fall heavily to the ground. His eyes bulged out like a dead fish as he landed on the ground, groaning. Pei Zi-yun did not speak, the sound was unavoidable. He wiped the blood off his face. He had just killed a bandit. Before he killed him, he was filled with anger, but after killing him, he felt like vomiting. There are two more. After killing this man, Pei Zi-yun's eyes gleamed. Just at this moment, a bandit who was sleeping soundly suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. Looking at the moonlight outside, he estimated the time. It was his turn to keep watch. Touching his saber, he stood up and stretched his muscles, preparing to change shifts. When he arrived at the door, he saw a bandit sitting by the bonfire. His head was bent over, as if he had fallen asleep. "Hey, it's time to change shifts." As he spoke, he walked over, but he immediately felt something was wrong. There was a strong smell of blood. Die! Pei Zi-yun's bamboo spear pierced through the air. Pooh! The bandit reacted very quickly. With a backhand slash, he chopped at the bamboo spear and immediately chopped it in half. At this moment, a saber slashed towards his neck. The saber light was so bright that he could only vaguely see a figure. The bandit couldn't help but lick his lips as he sidestepped the saber. With a ferocious smile, he charged forward. When he saw who it was, he shouted, "Little bastard, die for your grandpa." This was to wake up the third leader. He had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly tripped. Before he could react, he fell down. "It's a rope to trip me." The bandit reacted immediately. This was a method the villagers often used to hunt animals. But just as this thought flashed through his mind, he saw the flash of a saber. Poochie! The saber slashed across his neck, and fresh blood spurted out from his throat. Purng! The corpse fell heavily to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Who? When the middle-aged bandit shouted outside, he had already woken up. When the bandit fell to the ground, he was already fully awake. Subconsciously, he reached for his saber and rushed out. When he looked, he saw that the 2 men he had brought out were lying on the ground, covered in blood. In the distance, a figure was running away. He had already reached the forest outside the walls. The figure was not big and was very skinny. He held a bamboo spear and a long saber as he entered the forest. "Little bastard, you dare to kill my Black Wind bandits and still want to escape? Die!" With one look, the middle-aged bandit knew what had happened. His face contorted and his eyes turned bloodshot. In an instant, he dashed forward. Pei Zi-yun turned around and saw that the middle-aged bandit had already caught up to him. This speed was incomparable to the speed of the 2 ordinary bandits he had killed. In his previous life, because the village had handed over the young girl, Pei Zi-yun had never seen the strength of this middle-aged bandit. Looking at him now, he was indeed a bandit. This time, he had made a huge mistake and was being chased. In a few breaths, the person behind him had caught up. "Bastard, I have Tao arts." Pei Zi-yun laughed coldly. The original owner had learned Tao arts. Although he had not specifically trained in it, there were some techniques that even an ordinary person could use. Of course, the power of these techniques was small. But in this forest, as long as there was a slight delay, he would be able to kill the middle-aged bandit. Leg trip. As he walked past a withered vine, Pei Zi-yun pointed at it. This technique was deeply etched in his memory. It was actually a trick. All an ordinary person had to do was to use it, and he would be able to delay the middle-aged bandit and kill him. But in the next moment, Pei Zi-yun's expression froze. The withered vine did not react at all. "Go to hell." The middle-aged bandit laughed sinisterly and slashed at Pei Zi-yun. Without thinking, Pei Zi-yun rolled on the ground. A few strands of hair were cut off, and his body fell to the ground, rolling into the forest. Out of the corner of his eyes, Pei Zi-yun glanced at the middle-aged bandit from the Black Wind sect who had followed him in. Without any hesitation, he rolled to the side and passed through the bushes. He saw that the bushes were full of thorns, and some of the leaves had turned yellow and fallen onto the bushes. Pei Ziyun passed through the bushes and looked at the pursuing black-winged bandit. Without looking back, he ran into the mountains. The mountains were filled with trees, and the shadows were dense. As long as he kept a distance of 30 steps, the dense forest would be the best cover at night. As soon as he entered the forest, the black-winged bandit felt that something was wrong. All he could see were bushes, and it was difficult to see clearly at night. He could see that the bushes were not very tall, and the moment he touched the thorns, he felt a piercing pain in his heart. He fiercely pulled out a wooden thorn that was stuck in his leg. The corner of his mouth curled up as he let out a soft cry. He pulled out a knife and chopped a few times. The bushes were immediately cut down and scattered to the ground. Some moonlight shone through the forest, and the dense thorns under the bushes were exposed, densely packed. Pei Ziyun did not even look back as he continued running. 3 breaths had passed, and he was 15 steps away. Under the cover of the dense forest, his silhouette was getting further and further away. The middle-aged bandit's eyes turned cold, and he slashed at the bushes that were blocking his way and chased after Pei Ziyun. Pei Ziyun was panting heavily. His body was really weak. He had only used a short amount of time to attack and run, but his arms were already aching and his lungs were burning. Pei Ziyun was familiar with this place. Back in the mountain village, even though he had passed the examinations, his family was poor. He had to go up the mountain from time to time to help his family gather some mushrooms, firewood, or wild vegetables to support the family. It was also because of this kind of labor that he often came and went in the mountains. Only then did he have the strength to flee and attack. At this moment, although he was brave, it was difficult for him to move. The middle-aged bandit had already caught up, and was only 7 or 8 steps away. Although there were bushes in between, and he did not dare to run around, it would take him at most 2 or 3 breaths to catch up. As he neared, he heard Pei Ziyun panting. He was overjoyed. This bastard was exhausted. With that thought in mind, he raised his knife and pounced forward. 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps. I'm close, die. 1 step, 2 steps, the long knife in his hand slashed down, and a cold light flashed. At this point, he suddenly staggered, as if he had tripped over something. The knife that had been smoothly slashed out suddenly missed its target. A tree beside him, which was as thick as an arm, was cut in half and fell to the ground. Cunning! Pei Ziyun saw that it was a wooden plank. He must have kicked it while he was running. Pei Ziyun gasped for breath and rolled on the ground. He raised his knife and was about to slash down when he saw the middle-aged bandit looking back at him, and the knife in his hand move. Pei Ziyun was shocked. He saw that the bandit's knife had been deflected, and the light shone into his eyes, causing his vision to blur. Shocked, he rolled on the ground and opened his eyes. All he could see were bushes and trees that had been cut in half. At this point, a few trees the size of an arm had fallen, blocking the bandit's path. What a good opportunity! Pei Ziyun was overjoyed. He pressed his hands against the ground and stood up, running away. Just now, according to Pei Ziyun's original plan, he should have stalled the bandit leader and killed him with his knife, just like he had done with the other bandits in the temple. But this man's knife technique was so cruel, and his reaction was so fast. Just as he was about to counterattack, he was blinded by the light of the knife. This man was indeed an old bandit who had been through countless battles, and could not be dealt with normally. Night deepened, Snail Village. The sounds of people gradually died down, but not far from the entrance, there were still a few people staring at her. It was obvious that they were trying to prevent her from escaping. The 2 courtyards were connected, and after a while, a person pressed against the wall and slipped to the opposite side. "Brother Pei, where are you?" Yi Suer entered the house, and the sudden darkness caused her to stop in her tracks. Although she knew that her brother Pei did not have the power to save her, but she still held on to a glimmer of hope, even if it was just one more time. There was no reply and no sound. Her face slowly turned pale. All of a sudden, She recalled a similar scene from when she was young. Han Yi had run away from home in a fit of pique, and had fallen into a trap in the mountains. The trap was too secluded, and the adults who were searching at night had missed it several times. She cried and cried, listening to the howls of the wolves in the mountains. The light of dawn shone brightly. She saw a boy lying in the trap, his voice hoarse. It was only later that she found out that the wolves had passed by, and that the adults had given up. Only the boy was still searching in the dark, listening to the howls of the wolves like her. He did not give up and found her, but the boy was too stupid, jumping into the trap and squatting down with her. She could only remember to shout "idiot" to vent her fear, and to calm herself down. But now, even that feeling had disappeared? She opened her eyes, and her trembling hands hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. Under the moonlight, no one was asleep. Seeing that Brother Pei was not ignoring her, the color returned to her face, and she frantically searched the room. Where is he? He was here just now. After searching for a while, she suddenly thought of something, and her face turned pale. The hatchet is gone. No, could it be that Brother Pei has gone? She did not hesitate any longer. She staggered and nimbly hid in the shadows, rushing out of the village. Chapter 4. Cha! A light sound could be heard as the tree branches in front of the bandit were sliced apart. The middle-aged bandit looked over and saw that the thief had once again distanced himself from him. How crafty, but where can you run to? Today I shall cut you down with my blade. Looking at the footsteps of the thief, the middle-aged bandit caught up with him. His expression was much more relaxed as he wielded the long blade in his hand. He could feel that the thief was almost out of energy from their previous exchange. The middle-aged bandit followed closely behind. If he met with any obstacles, he would use his blade to cut them apart. Hua, in the depths of the forest, even Pei Ziyun, who was very familiar with the area, had to keep track of his surroundings. Logically speaking, there should be many traps set by the hunters in the forest. It was a pity that he did not have the time to look for them. The sound of trees being cut apart could be heard from behind. The middle-aged bandit roared, "You bastard, you can't run away! You're dead meat!" Pei Ziyun ran with large strides. He had just recovered from his illness. Although he still had the skills and techniques from his previous life, he could not defend himself against the Black Wind Bandit's blade. Luckily, he was familiar with the forest and was able to hold his own. Initially, he still had the energy to execute his moves, but now that he was running for his life, his energy was running out. All of a sudden, Pei Ziyun remembered that there was a small path in front of him. This path led to an animal trail. If he followed the trail, there would be a noose set up by the hunters and he could use it. An idea formed in his mind. He touched his blade with his left hand and laughed coldly. Ignoring the burning sensation in his lungs, he endured the pain and strode forward. Some of the bushes rushed past him, and many of the thorns pierced his body. It was like a knife cutting away at his flesh. The Black Mountain Bandit followed behind, his steps slow. He did not want to be covered in thorns. Even so, he was not slow. Seeing that Pei Ziyun was running, he laughed. This bastard is already out of energy, and yet he's still running. He will die in the blink of an eye. The middle-aged bandit laughed as he thought of this. He cleaved apart the bushes in front of him and advanced step by step. He saw that a small path had opened up in the dense bushes, extending all the way up the mountain. From where he stood, he could see that the path was very narrow, only the width of a person. Both sides were covered with bushes and grass. Under the moonlight there was only moonlight. As soon as he saw this small path, he was overjoyed. After running for more than 10 steps, he turned right and rolled past the shrubs. He arrived at an open field. This open field was halfway up the mountain. There were some sparse short trees and a lot of raspberries wrapped around them. The raspberries were small strawberries the size of a pinky or thumb. They were sour and sweet, and there were some thin thorns growing on the vines. At this moment, his mouth felt like it was on fire. Disregarding everything else, he plucked the raspberries and stuffed them into his mouth. The sweet and sour juice flowed down his parched throat as he gasped for breath. The raspberry leaves mixed with the raspberries. He swallowed them down without a care in the world. Wiping his mouth, he tilted his head and listened to the sounds of the bushes. He started counting. 1, 2, 3. Just as Pei Zi-yun counted to 3, the sound of the bushes moving could be heard. In an instant the sound stopped and he heard a cracking sound. It was the sound of something breaking. All he heard was, "Kacha, kacha." The bushes in front of him began to shake violently. Not good, the rope is useless. I have to run. This was the only thought in Pei Zi-yun's mind. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a "pa" sound was heard as the bush in front of him split open. The middle-aged bandit walked out from the opening in the bush. In front of him, there were some sweet potato vines on the ground. There seemed to be traces of wild boars digging through the soil. Pei Zi-yun was only 10 steps away, but he could not run any further. He turned around and faced the Black Mountain Bandit. Only now did the middle-aged bandit get a good look at the thief he was chasing. From the rough outline of the thief's face, he looked a bit young and immature. His face was covered in mud and sweat, making it impossible to see his face clearly. He wore a patched green robe and seemed to be gasping for breath, unable to run any further. He couldn't help but let out a mocking laugh, and slowly closed in with his saber in hand. "Why did you stop running?" The Black-Wind Bandit grinned viciously. He closed in slowly, not because he wanted to give the bastard a way out, but because he had chopped through the bushes to chase after him. At this moment, he was a little tired and panting a little. At this point, he glared at Pei Zi-yun and laughed sinisterly. He took the opportunity to catch his breath. This empty space was at most 10 meters wide. No matter how fast this bastard tried to run, he would be able to catch up to him within 2 or 3 breaths. Taking a few steps forward, he roared furiously and charged forward. "Die!" Pei Zi-yun licked his lips. There was still the sweetness and sourness of the raspberry that he had just chewed on. He seemed to be struggling at the last minute as he turned to the side with all his might. His gaze swept across a patch of grass. The moonlight was dim here, and the ground was soft to the touch when he stepped on it. He would never forget this place. Many years ago, a girl with pigtails had fallen into a pit here. Fortunately, I took out the clip yesterday. How did you fall down? She watched herself jump into the pit, and her tears gushed out. Fool, fool, you don't know how to call for help. It's so dangerous to jump in. This memory flashed through his mind, and he ran out. The middle-aged bandit didn't want to chase after him anymore. He sprinted with all his might, covering 5 or 6 meters in 3 or 4 steps. But the middle-aged bandit stepped on the ground. At this point, he felt something sink into his foot, and a sharp pain pierced through his bones. It was as if his foot had been caught by something. Blood flowed from his foot, soaking his shoes and foot. "Ah, it's the animal trap!" The middle-aged bandit screamed in pain. He immediately understood what had happened, and his heart was filled with hatred. He had been tripped once before, how could he have been careless again? The animal trap was extremely tight, and he screamed in pain. He raised his head and saw the young bandit he had been chasing. His face was covered in sweat and mud, and he was panting heavily. Pei Zi-yun swung his blade. "Die!" The middle-aged bandit was in extreme pain again, and raised his blade to block the attack. The 2 blades clashed, and sparks flew in all directions. As he struggled, his foot moved slightly, and blood flowed out even faster. This was a trap used to catch wild boars. Once one was caught, the more one struggled, the more one's muscles would be torn, and the more blood would flow out. "Bastard, I'm going to kill you!" The middle-aged bandit struggled, and wanted to lower his head to break the trap. But Pei Zi-yun swung his blade. "Die!" His voice was violent, and did not sound like that of a teenager. Pooh! This time, the middle-aged bandit did not manage to dodge the attack, and his left shoulder was slashed open. "Ah, how dare you slash me!" The middle-aged bandit screamed in pain. The premonition of death had caused his mind to be in chaos. Amidst the immense pain, he waved his long blade wildly. Seeing that the black-wind bandit was getting weaker, Pei Ziyun felt his heart lighten. He felt refreshed, and could not help but laugh out loud. His laughter reverberated in the air, and before he could stop, he swung his blade again. Pooh! This time, the middle-aged bandit's hand, which was holding the blade, was chopped off. The blade flew out of the bandit's hand. Amidst the intense pain, the middle-aged bandit screamed, "If you dare kill me, the leader will descend the mountain to take revenge. Come on!" The long blade slashed down, and blood splattered everywhere. "It's easy to be a hero. I surrender, and I'll pay the money. The chief patrol officer will treat me as his brother, and will not lay a finger on me. If you really kill me, the black-wind bandits will not let you off." In the face of death, the black-wind bandit began to tremble in fear. "Idiot!" Pei Ziyun took a deep breath, and looked at the third leader of the black-wind bandits in front of him. The events of his past life flashed before his eyes. Yes, it's time to end this. Although his body had reached its limit, he still slowly raised his blade and stepped forward. The new dynasty has been established, and the imperial court has been focusing on the internal affairs of the country. They have not been able to deal with you bandits in the remote areas, and have only been able to maintain local control. Whenever a new dynasty is established, bandits will be eliminated. In a few years, the imperial court will send troops to sweep through the counties, and all of you will be destroyed. The one who will destroy your black-wind bandits will be the chief patrol officer who was kind to you today. As he said this, he was about to chop the black-wind bandits down. Unexpectedly, the third leader of the black-wind bandits ignored the trap and knelt down, begging loudly, "Don't kill me, I have parents and children." Pei Ziyun narrowed his eyes, and was about to kill him when suddenly, the black-wind bandit used his uninjured hand to pull out a dagger from his calf, and threw it with all his might. Under the moonlight, the dagger blinded Pei Ziyun's eyes. He rolled away and felt a sharp pain on his face. A trickle of blood flowed down his face. "Go to hell." Pei Ziyun did not give him another chance, and slashed the top of the black-wind bandit's head. Pooh! The black-wind bandit's brain exploded, and yellowish-white brain matter spurted out. "He's finally dead." Under the moonlight, Pei Ziyun gasped for breath. Suddenly, he felt all his strength leave him, and fell to the ground. He was really exhausted, and his entire body was in pain. Enduring the pain, he plucked out more than 10 wooden splinters from his body, and wiped the blood off his face. He plucked a few raspberries, and threw them into his mouth. He sat on the ground, and used both hands to support himself. He panted, and quietly recovered his strength. After some time, he regained his strength, and walked up to check on the black-wind bandit. He saw that the black-wind bandit was indeed dead. He tidied up the black-wind bandit's belongings, and lifted up the black-wind bandit's clothes. Only then did he realize that under the black-wind bandit's clothes, there was a short sword. It was exquisite, and when he pulled it out, a cold glint shone in his eyes. He searched the black-wind bandit's body, and found a money pouch. He opened it, and found some silver fragments, about 10 taels of silver. These were his spoils of war. Pei Ziyun smiled, and accepted them all. He stood up, and gazed into the distance. In the distance there was a mountain range. The mountain breeze blew on his body, and he felt refreshed. Looking down at the chaotic village below, he felt a sense of heroism. He tidied up his body, and got rid of the blood and mud, before heading down the mountain. When he reached the foot of a large tree, he heard a squeaking sound. Pei Ziyun stopped in his tracks, and his eyes regained their sharpness. He looked in a direction. "Who is it?" Is it Brother Pei? After a long time, a trembling voice could be heard. Following that, a shadow appeared. Under the moonlight, it was Yi Suer. Although her clothes were in tatters, and she had lost one of her hairpins, and half of her hair was disheveled, it was indeed Yi Suer. Seeing Pei Ziyun and the blood on his body, she burst into tears, and threw herself into Pei Ziyun's arms. Pei Ziyun paused. In his previous life, she had not been able to escape. How did she manage to escape this time? Seeing her in such a sorry state, he suddenly understood. It was this girl who had guessed his whereabouts, and had the courage that she did not have in his previous life, and came looking for him. Looking for him under such circumstances, she must have been prepared to die. Pei Ziyun suddenly understood. He understood that this was the original owner's bitterness, relief, and joy. Chapter 5. In his previous life, even though she knew that the original owner was helpless, Yi Suer still snuck into his room and cried, "Brother Pei." The original owner of the body was helpless, and could only watch as she cried. It was nearing dawn, and the sounds of people could be heard. She gritted her teeth and removed her clothes. "Brother Pei." Thinking back, she already had the will to die. Thinking back, it was the eyes of a little deer that was about to die. The most frustrating thing was that the original owner was afraid of trouble and did not dare to touch her. The original owner could not forget the look in her eyes when she was rejected. She did not even want to die, only an emptiness. She was about to be given to the bandits, and the person she loved did not even have the courage to touch her. Her heart had already turned to ashes. In the original owner's previous life, she was a key figure in the prosperity of the country. 3 yes and 2 guas, she was fated. The original owner could not tell what happened that night in the mountains behind the sect. Her feelings for him, was it love or was it love? The original owner had the plum blossom between his eyebrows, and only realized its use after 5 years. He had lost her long ago, but young Master Xie managed to get her. Hence, he had a bright future ahead of him. Even after he opened the gates of heaven and became a rogue cultivator, the plum blossom was stolen. It was only because of her pleading with young Master Xie that he was able to survive until the celebration. These memories flashed past his mind, but Pei Ziyun's eyes were calm. No matter what, everything was starting to change. He took the opportunity to hug her and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm here. Everything is fine now. These bandits have all been killed by me." As soon as he said this, his chest became wet. After a long time, Yi Suer, who was in Pei Ziyun's arms, responded. Following this response, Pei Ziyun felt his eyebrows light up, and a small white plum blossom appeared before his eyes. It grew bigger and became a translucent information interface. Name: Pei Ziyun. Authority: Nun, parasitic, race, human. Occupation: scholar. Techniques: Introduction to the 4 books and 5 classics, incomplete. Free cloud sword technique, incomplete. Following this, a line of red words appeared on the information interface. Mission: Save Yi Suer. 80% complete. Skill point +1. As Pei Ziyun looked over, a message appeared in his mind. Does this mean I can add points? Pei Ziyun was overjoyed. Coming to this foreign world, even Pei Ziyun couldn't help but feel a sense of insecurity. He tried to suppress it, but the more he fought, the more anxious he felt. Now, he could finally relax a little. Without thinking, he directly pointed at the free cloud swordsmanship, incomplete. Buzz. Pei Ziyun could feel a warm current flowing through his body before disappearing in the blink of an eye. The Free Cloud Sect sword techniques entry-level, incomplete, had become entry-level. This change happened in a split second. Yi Suer looked confused as she lifted her head and stared at Pei Ziyun. Regarding her suspicions, Pei Ziyun did not say anything further. He then said softly, "I am a fellow disciple of the hunter's son in the village. He knows some martial arts and I've watched him practice before. That's why I've learned some from him." Pei Ziyun touched Yi Suer's face as he spoke. Yi Suer could not help but shiver as she smelled the blood on Pei Ziyun's body. She pressed her face against his chest and felt the warmth of his heart. Even though Pei Ziyun had said it casually, she was very familiar with Pei Ziyun. Such courage and ferocity, it must be because of his love for her. Yi Suer was speechless. The silvery moonlight illuminated the uneven village. Looking from afar, one could see that Snail Village was different tonight. The village chief's office was brightly lit, with several torches lit. Many people walked to and fro. Brother Pei, those Andes are usually so nice. Why did they suddenly become like this? Yi Suer said softly. All of them had torn off their usual friendly facade, and were forcing her to go to the Black Wind camp. If she did not go, she would be the sinner of the entire village. Brother Pei, I was so scared just now. I was afraid that I would never see you again. Yi Suer leaned against Pei Ziyun's chest, her eyes filled with fear as she spoke. Don't be afraid, it's all in the past now. Let's go back to the village now. Seeing that Yi Suer was still a little scared, Pei Ziyun said blandly, they were doing it for their own survival. We can understand, but we shouldn't be so kind as to accept it. However, we have to go back now. Let's pretend that nothing happened. Don't be afraid, I've already killed these bandits. They won't send you to the Black Wind camp. My teacher has some influence as well, so you can rely on him for protection. As for the rest, I will take care of it. As he spoke, Pei Ziyun stretched out his hand and gently brushed Yi Suer's hair behind her ear, revealing her delicate face. Her nose was small, her eyebrows were arched, and her eyelashes were curled upwards. She had a childish face, and he could not help but be entranced. Okay, Yi Suer replied. The two of them reached the village and entered their own house. Snail Village in the mountains, the sun always rose earlier. It was bright red, and gradually peeked out from the foot of the mountain. The entire area was bathed in light, and as the sky brightened, the roosters in the village began to crow. The village chief was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He looked at the sacks of rice. Last night, he and his men had finally gathered all the goods that the Black Wind bandits wanted. He heaved a sigh of relief. This year's ordeal was finally over, and there would be peace for a while. At this point, an old woman walked in and whispered into the village chief's ear. The village chief nodded his head and said, It's good that she's still here. Keep an eye on her. Without her, these bandits will not give up. When that happens, we will be in deep trouble. Hearing the village chief say this, the old woman was shocked and hurriedly nodded her head. The sky gradually brightened. The bandits had requested for the goods in the morning, but it was already late in the morning, and they still had not arrived. The villagers couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. They hesitated, not knowing what had happened. As soon as the sky brightened, many of them became bolder. Zhang Dashan said, Village chief, I will go and see what's going on. These bandits are after money, and they come to the village every year to collect grain. They are not willing to make a blood feud with us. I will meet them once in a while, so it should be fine. Okay, these bandits usually rest in the temple outside the village. Usually, no one goes there. You go and look for them, but be polite. Zhang Dashan agreed, and went out to the dilapidated temple. Seeing that the temple door was wide open, and there was no sound from within, he poked his head in to take a look. What he saw shocked him. 2 of the Black Wind bandits had been killed. One had been stabbed in the chest with a bamboo spear, and his neck had been slit. The other had been decapitated, and his head was rolling on the ground. Zhang Dashan was frozen like a wooden statue. A gust of cold wind blew a small piece of wood onto his shoulder. Only then did he jolt awake and realize that the terrifying situation in front of him was not a dream. He immediately sobered up and crawled out of the room in fright. When he was outside, Zhang Dashan finally heaved a sigh of relief. His heart was pounding, his ears were ringing, and he was dizzy. He forced himself to run back. When he saw the village chief, he screamed, Not good, not good. Seeing his expression, the village chief's legs turned to jelly. He asked, "What's wrong? Are you trying to scare us to death?" Zhang Dashan was still a little clear-headed at this point. He pulled the village chief to a secluded corner and said, "Village chief, those Black Wind bandits can't come. They're all dead now, hacked to death in the temple." The village chief was stunned and his eyes widened. A gust of wind blew, and the village chief trembled. He said in a trembling voice, "Is this true? Don't tell me you're dreaming." "Village chief, go and take a look, and you'll know." Zhang Dashan glanced at the people around him, and said in a low voice. The village chief looked up at the sky for a long time. Without saying a word, he stood up and ran to the temple. With just one look, his body trembled. What he saw were 2 bloody corpses, but the bandits' leader was nowhere to be seen. He knew that disaster was imminent. Disaster has come, our snail village is finished. After a while, the entire village was shaken. People came and went, and no one cared about Yisur anymore. Yisur listened to the sounds of people crying and chattering outside, and her face was filled with worry. "Sur, don't worry, I just saw the bandits' corpses. I am a scholar. The villagers would never have thought that I was the one who killed them. Hence, I won't be implicated. It's just that you will be in trouble. However, my teacher, Mr. Zhao, is teaching in the village. He is a righteous man. Since this is a disaster, I shall send you to him. He is benevolent and righteous, and will definitely protect us." When Yisur heard this, she was overjoyed, but also worried. "If Mr. thinks that I am just a woman, and does not want to protect me, what should we do? If Mr. is unwilling, I will bring you far away." Pei Ziyun's eyes shone brightly, and he said firmly, "I will not let you fall into the hands of the bandits." Yisur replied softly. Mr. Zhao's residence was in a bamboo forest, and was quite a distance from the village. Holding Yisur's hand, Pei Ziyun took big strides towards Mr. Zhao's house. The bamboo forest was vast, and from afar, it looked like a sea of bamboos. Mr. Zhao loved this place, and built his house here. Mr. Zhao was drinking in the courtyard. On the small table, there was a plate of stir-fried cured meat. Although there was no oil, it was still fragrant. There was also a plate of tofu, with a few scallions sprinkled on top. The tofu was golden and tender, and looked extremely tempting. At this point, Mr. Zhao was raising a cup of sake, and using his long sleeves to cover his mouth. He drank a cup. After drinking the sake, he picked up a piece of cured meat. At this point, he saw a man and a woman walk in. When he looked closer, he realized it was his student and a young lady. "So it's Ziyun, why are you still standing? Sit." Yisur had seen Mr. Zhao a few times before, and this time, her mood was different. She looked at him carefully, and saw that he was a middle-aged man dressed in a green robe. He had a medium build, a long face, and a pair of black eyebrows. His eyes shone brightly, and no one dared to look him in the eye. Her heart skipped a beat. Pei Ziyun did not sit down, his emotions were complicated. He had obtained the original owner's memories, and naturally knew that this person was an elder of Free Cloud sect. He had many opportunities to learn Dao arts, but the original owner was very stubborn, and thought that these were all nonsense. Hence, there was no fate between them. Hence, this Mr. Zhao only taught Confucianism. In the future, the original owner used the plum blossom to steal Dao arts, and eventually became a disciple of Mr. Zhao. One step behind and every step behind. Thinking about it, Pei Ziyun could not help but sigh. Time had passed, and he was afraid that it would be too late. He bowed and said, "Benefactor, this time I have come to ask for help." Chapter 6. Oh, what's the matter? Tell me. Mister, last night the Black Wind bandits attacked us. They wanted to take food and beauties. The village wanted to gift my childhood friend Yisur to the Black Wind bandits. At this point, Pei Ziyun paused. "I was a scholar, and was powerless to resist. Luckily, the heavens have eyes. I don't know why, but someone killed the bandits in the temple. Now the village is in an uproar. This is my good fortune, but I cannot rely on this every time. I have thought of everything, and could only beg Mr. Zhao to help me. Oh? Mr. Zhao looked at Yi Su-er and Pei Ziyun and laughed. Of course, if the village does this, it would be dishonorable. Fine, I will let her stay. Thank you, teacher, hold on. Mr. Zhao waved his hands, his smile was gone, but this is not a long-term plan. Although the Black Wind bandits are not going to last long, they are not at their end yet. The villagers are ignorant, and I'm afraid that they will have other ideas. If you want to protect her, you have to take drastic measures. Pei Ziyun's body trembled, and he bowed. Please enlighten me. Ziyun, when I was reading your essay yesterday, I felt that it was time to take the scholarly examinations. I wanted to tell you about it, but I didn't expect you to come here today. The spring examinations are just around the corner. All you have to do is go to the capital and become an elementary scholar. Then, you can convince the patrol office to include Snail Village in their patrol. Although the Black Wind bandits are arrogant, they are not stupid, and would not dare to fight them head-on. You can then use this opportunity to protect her. Mr. Zhao paused for a moment before taking out a silver ingot from his robes and placing it in front of Pei Ziyun. This is some money for your journey. Take it and go. During this period of time, I will definitely protect you and your childhood sweetheart. Yi Su-er saw Mr. Zhao take out 10 taels of silver, and was stunned. For a normal family, 1 tael of silver could get them through 3 months. 3 taels of silver could get them through a year. 10 taels of silver could get them through 3 years of living expenses. At this point, Yi Su-er looked troubled. I am just a girl, how can I stay with you, Brother Pei? She did not want to disappoint Brother Pei, and could not help but look troubled. She did not know how to finish her sentence. Haha, that's easy. I will write a letter for you. 5 miles away, there is a Taoist temple where the Taoist nun lives. The Taoist nun there is a good friend of mine. Ziyun can go with you. With this letter, the Taoist nun will agree to take you in. Mr. Zhao picked up the wine cup on the table and covered it with his hand. He raised his head and downed another cup of wine. He then said, As long as you become an elementary scholar, your family's land can be redeemed. The Li family will not object. As soon as these words were spoken, Pei Ziyun felt his forehead light up. A small white plum blossom appeared in front of his eyes. It quickly grew bigger and became a translucent information interface. There was a mission, but now wasn't the time to look at it. Pei Ziyun smiled and thought to himself, indeed, Teacher's Place isn't a long-term solution. Even the Priestess's Hall isn't a good place to be. In order to defend against the Black Wind bandits and the villagers, I have to take the imperial examinations and earn some scholarly honors. That's not all. In the long run, my family is poor, and if I want to change my fate, I will need to have a high status. If I take the examinations and become an elementary scholar, my situation will improve tremendously. Thinking up to this point, Pei Ziyun's heart skipped a beat. He then clasped his hands and said, Since teacher has given his orders, this student will obey. Seeing that Pei Ziyun had agreed, Mr. Zhao laughed out loud and said, Come, I know you are impatient. Drink this cup and send your beauty to the Dao Hall to avoid calamity. Remember to come a few more times before the imperial examinations. I will tutor you personally. This time, you must become an elementary scholar, and not let your mother down. Yes. Pei Ziyun received the cup of wine from Mr. Zhao's hands and raised his head to drink. The wine was burning hot and flowed down his throat. It was a refreshing feeling. He then sighed and said, This feels good. After leaving Mr. Zhao's house, they were only 5 miles away from the monastery. It wasn't too far, but it wasn't too close either. Pei Ziyun brought Yi Su-er to a place not too far away from the monastery. Looking into the distance, he saw a river flowing past. There were peach trees growing on the hills, and the sun shone down on them. The peach trees were in full bloom, emitting a light fragrance. The monastery was situated right in the middle of the peach forest. As they neared, the fragrance of the peach trees entered their nostrils. There were butterflies and bees flying around. In front of the monastery, there were 2 large trees, blocking the empty space in front of the monastery. They were also peach trees, blooming with peach blossoms. It seemed like the owner of the monastery was very fond of peach trees. Pei Ziyun paused for a moment. This monastery was the residence of a priestess. In his previous life, he had never been here. Yi Su had heard of it before. She turned to Pei Ziyun and said, "Brother Pei, I've heard of this peach blossom monastery before. There is a priestess living here. She is kind and charitable, and often helps the poor. She has a good reputation. I didn't expect Mr. Zhao to introduce this place to me." "That's great. Let's go and call for someone." As he finished speaking, Pei Ziyun walked forward and raised the brass ring in front of the door. He knocked a few times and someone answered, "Coming." As he spoke, the door creaked open, and a young Taoist girl walked out. This young Taoist girl was small and looked like a lowly. She looked at the 2 people in front of her and bowed before asking, "Two benefactors, may I know why you have come to Peach Blossom Monastery? Are you here to pray to the gods or to burn incense? However, this monastery is for priestesses, and men are not allowed to enter. I hope you will forgive me." Pei Ziyun took a step forward and handed over the letter in his hands. "I am a student of Snail Villages, Mr. Zhao. I have a favor to ask of you, and have come to visit the Taoist priest. This is a letter from Mr. Zhao, I hope you will pass it on." "It's a letter from Mr. Zhao." The young Taoist girl seemed to be very familiar with Mr. Zhao. She took the letter and looked at the handwriting on it before saying, "It's indeed Elder Zhao's handwriting. Please wait here, I shall pass the message." As he finished speaking, he turned around and closed the door behind him. Pei Ziyun could hear someone shouting from within, "Master, Master, someone has come to visit. It's Mr. Zhao's student." Elder Zhao, this Taoist girl said he was familiar with this place. Could it be that this place is also a stronghold of a sect? Does it have something to do with Elder Zhao? Pei Ziyun's heart skipped a beat. According to the original owner's memories, although it was a sect, it was not isolated from the rest of the world. Especially since it had many branches and branches. Pei Ziyun didn't expect this place to be the same. After some time, footsteps could be heard from within the monastery. The door opened and a female Taoist priest walked out. This female Taoist priest was dressed in a Taoist robe. She didn't look very old, probably around 30 years old. Her appearance was extraordinary, and her eyes were clear and bright. Seeing the female Taoist priest walk out, Pei Ziyun and Yi Su bowed to her. Pei Ziyun then said, "Many thanks to Taoist priest. Taoist priest should have read Mr. Zhao's letter. I hope that Taoist priest will approve of my request. Once this matter is over, I shall return to fulfill my wish." The female Taoist priest paced a few steps, as if she was in a difficult position. She then said, "You know that I am not part of this world, and do not participate in the affairs of the mortal world. It's just that Mr. Zhao and I are old friends, and that's why I am hesitating. But my Taoist sect is not part of the mortal world, and is very particular about fate. I have a request that you can help me with. That is fate. I will protect her from being harmed by others. What do you think?" "Of course." Pei Ziyun's expression did not change, but Yi Su-er's face turned pale, and she couldn't help but feel annoyed. "All right, I have lived in this Peach Blossom Monastery for many years. Just a few days ago, an old friend of mine came to visit me. He saw how beautiful this Peach Blossom Monastery is and was very fond of it. However, he hated the name of this monastery. He said that since it is part of the mortal world, why does the monastery's name sound so unpleasant to the ears? It's just that I have loved peach blossoms since I was young, and do not wish to change the name of the monastery. I also wish to be part of the mortal world. You are a scholar, and since you have a request for me, if I can help you with it, I will agree to your request. With peach blossoms as the title, you want to be part of the mortal world. Pei Ziyun was in a difficult position. Peach blossoms, peach blossoms. If it were the original owner, he would have been in a difficult position. But now that Pei Ziyun had taken a few steps, he suddenly remembered that there was a river near the monastery. A thought flashed through his mind, and he laughed out loud. Taoist leader, bring me some paper and ink. This matter is easy, I already have an idea. When the Taoist nun heard this, she was somewhat surprised. She looked at Pei Ziyun, and saw that he seemed to have a card up his sleeve. She then smiled and said, "Looks like young master has a card up his sleeve. The ink, brush and ink are inside, please come in." When he entered the courtyard, he saw that it was the main hall of the monastery. The floor was paved with limestone, and between the cracks of the limestone, there were some tender green grass growing. On the right side, there was a small door that led to a corridor. Although it wasn't very big, it was very unique. This should be the residence of the Taoist nun. On the right side of the corridor, there was a table with ink, brush, and ink. It turned out that the Taoist nun had woken up early in the morning to practice her calligraphy. Pei Ziyun walked up and picked up a brush, ink and paper. He muttered to himself for a moment before writing a few words. Fishing was his profession. He walked along the stream, forgetting the distance. Suddenly he came across a peach blossom forest, a few hundred steps from the shore. There were no other trees, the grass was fresh and tasty, the fallen petals were in profusion. The fisherman was very surprised. He continued forward, desiring to end the forest. The forest was filled with water, and there was a mountain. There was a small opening in the mountain, and it seemed as if there was light. He searched for it, but he was lost, and he could no longer find his way back. After that, no one asked him about it. After he finished writing, he wrote 3 big words on a piece of white paper: Peach Blossom Spring. Putting down his brush, he asked, "Monastery head, is the title of this essay appropriate?" Peach Garden, Peach Garden. The Taoist nun was stunned for a long time. She then laughed. "You are indeed a good student of Mr. Zhao. Such spirituality is close to the rhythm of the Tao. I am very fond of this garden. I will protect your plum blossoms." Pei Ziyun heaved a sigh of relief. He watched as she picked up the piece of paper and read it carefully. She seemed to be in a daze, and did not care about him anymore. Furthermore, this was a Taoist temple, and it was not appropriate to stay for long. Pei Ziyun said a few words to Yi Suer and left. Once he was out of the monastery, Pei Ziyun called out, "System." All of a sudden, a small white plum blossom appeared in front of him. It grew bigger and became a translucent information interface. It floated in front of his eyes, and a string of data appeared. Name: Pei Ziyun. Authority: Nun, parasitic race. Human occupation: scholar techniques. 4 books and 5 classics. Beginner, incomplete. Free cloud sword technique. Beginner, mission 1. Save Yi Suer, completed. Receive authority: First plum blossom petal, virtual. Mission 2. Attain elementary scholar status. This is authority? Looks like the original owner has suffered a loss, and has improved a lot. This plum blossom spiritual treasure will be transferred to me based on the completion of the mission. Pei Ziyun looked at the image in front of him, and thought back to the original owner's memories. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, he commanded, "Receive." A warm feeling appeared, and a light red petal appeared between his eyebrows. It was slightly translucent, and did not look real. Chapter 7. Peach Blossom Origins Monastery. After Pei Ziyun left, the Taoist nun instructed the Taoist nun to take care of Yi Suer. The monastery looked ordinary, but when she reached the back of the monastery and saw a door, Yi Suer was shocked. She saw a corridor with trees and rocks all around. In the middle of the corridor was a hall, and behind the hall were 5 rooms, all of which were richly ornamented. She entered her own room, which was decorated elegantly. The Taoist nun smiled and said, "Take a rest, I will call you when it's time to eat." As she walked out, she saw the Taoist nun put down the paper. In front of her was a light red talisman. There was a small circle of light on the talisman, and a shadow could be seen on it. The person inside said, "Junior sister, it's rare for you to use the talisman to communicate, what's the matter?" "Senior sister, today Free Cloud Sex Zhao Ning wrote me a letter, asking me to protect someone." The Taoist nun smiled and said, "Hence, I did him a small favor. This is a small matter, if junior sister wants to protect him, it's fine. But it's not worth it for junior sister to use the talisman to tell me, right?" The person opposite her said, after a moment of silence, "Senior sister knows me best. Look at this was written by Pei Ziyun within 5 steps. His literary talent is not bad, but look at the description inside." As she said this, she began to read. This Peach Blossom Origins was only 395 words long, and was finished in a short while. The person opposite her was silent for a long time before saying, "This Peach Blossom Origins, although it's only a few hundred words, but the description is like a paradise outside of this world. It looks like a paradise, but at the same time, it's like a paradise. This Pei Ziyun, is he a Tao disciple?" The Taoist nun laughed. "If he's a Tao disciple, why would I be surprised? I know this person. Free Cloud Sex Zhao Ning is looking for a reincarnated senior uncle in Snail Village." At first, he took notice of this person, but realized that he was too worldly, and only focused on studying Confucian books. Hence, he gave up on him. He doesn't know the secrets of Tao. Besides, the description of paradise is not known to external disciples, and only true disciples would know. Zhao Ning would never tell anyone. So he has a Tao root and wisdom bone? The silhouette remained silent for a while before he spoke. "The talisman shadows are about to disappear, and I can't tell you in detail. How about this, I will come and take a look once I'm done with my seclusion." As she said this, there was a "pa" sound, and a small circle of light on the talisman paper was extinguished. The priestess did not seem surprised, and waved her sleeve and laughed, "Ha ha, I didn't expect that I would be cultivating here, and that I would be able to find a good talent for my sect." He was in a good mood and instructed, "Today, ask Auntie Lee to serve a few more dishes. Tell her that there will be one more person in the monastery." The little girl agreed without any hesitation. Although the Taoist temple was not small, everyone was female, and the chef was not willing to cook every day. Therefore, the meals were usually provided by a small restaurant nearby. At this time, all she had to do was ask, and it was just a matter of spending a few more taels of silver. These few taels of silver were naturally not a big deal. Snail Village. Pei Ziyun was deep in thought as he walked back. It was almost noon. Even if something had happened, people still had to eat. Hence, the entire village was filled with smoke. When he reached the door, he sniffed the air. The entire house was filled with the faint smell of ashes and the fragrance of rice. "Mother, you're back?" Pei Ziyun looked over and saw that it was his mother, Pei Qianshi, who had gone out yesterday. She had returned home and was cooking. She was only around 30 years old, but looked to be in her 40s due to long periods of toil. His mother had caught a cough and started coughing. Pei Ziyun felt a warmth in his heart as he hurriedly walked forward and gently massaged her back. Pei Qianshi turned around and saw her own son, dressed in a green robe. He had just returned from outside, and her furrowed brows relaxed. Pei Qianshi grabbed onto Pei Ziyun's sleeve and asked, "Son, when I returned home this morning, I didn't see you. I heard the village auntie say that the Black Wind bandits came to the village last night to ask for food, and didn't see my son. I was very worried. Now that I see my son is fine, I am relieved." As soon as she finished speaking, tears rolled down her cheeks. In his previous life, his mother was like this too. She would cry easily for him. Seeing his mother like this, Pei Ziyun felt his heart ache. At this point, Pei Qianshi stood up and saw that the fire in the stove was burning brightly. The flames licked the bottom of the pot, and the aroma of porridge wafted out from under the lid. Since the family was poor, the kitchen was small and there was no chimney, and the smoke came out from under the pot. It turned out that while his mother was cooking porridge, she would sew some things to help the family. She was coughing because of the smoke. Pei Ziyun then realized why his mother was coughing. "Mother, I still know how to light the fire." Pei Ziyun gently pushed his mother away. Pei Qianshi could not dissuade her son, and could only continue to sew. "Yi Su'er, I have always liked her. She is pretty and can run a household," his mother said with a smile as she continued to sew. She did not know that the Black Wind bandits had asked for a beauty from the village. "I know that you and Yi Su'er were childhood sweethearts. No matter what happens in the future, you must treat her well. I see that the two of you are so innocent. When you get married, I will be at ease." As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at the porridge in the kitchen and prepared to take a bowl. The mother and son pair ate the porridge. The Pei household was very strict, and Pei Ziyun's mother was the same. During meals, unless there was something important, she would not say a word. After lunch, they rested for a while. Pei Ziyun then told his mother about his meeting with Mr. Pei today, hiding the fact that Yi Su'er was not mentioned. He told her about how Mr. Pei had given him money to attend the imperial examinations. When Pei Ziyun's mother heard about this, she stopped what she was doing and started to speak. "Your late father was a high scholar from the previous dynasty. At that time, there was no one in the imperial court, so he was assigned to suppress the rebellion. In the end, he was killed by the bandit. He died for his country. Who would have thought that he would be framed and said that he had died for the bandit? How could I argue in the chaos? I escaped with your uncle. In the chaos of war, it was not a peaceful journey. Your uncle tried to protect me, but his old injuries flared up during the escape, and he died. Because of the panic during the escape, I only had time to bring some savings with me. When I arrived in the village, I could only buy some family property. After giving birth to you, I spent all of my savings, and my life became more and more difficult. Other than the books I left behind, the rest of my family property was mortgaged. Luckily, I know how to embroider, and that was how I managed to survive. The new dynasty was established, and the world became peaceful. A few years ago, Mr. Zhao came here. Because he was the son of an official, he asked you to be his disciple. He often helped us out and taught you how to read every day. Today, he said that you have achieved success in your studies. My family can finally bring glory to our ancestors, and your father can finally rest in peace. In the future, when you become an official, do not forget the help that Mr. Zhao has given us." Following his mother's narration, Pei Ziyun could not help but fall into a daze. He returned to his room. It was a small room with a wooden frame and a small window. A wooden bed took up half of the room, and on top of the bed were neatly stacked blankets. A bookshelf was placed against the wall, and it was filled with books. These were the books that his mother, Pei Qianshi, had risked her life to bring along. This was the foundation of a scholarly family. The books on the bookshelf had already been read by the original owner. On the small wooden table, there was an ink stone, paper, and brush. Pei Ziyun sat on a long stool and looked around. His heart was heavy and he was in a daze. He thought of the system's mission, and seemed to have understood something. It seemed like the original owner was not completely inflexible. The Pei family was originally an official's family. His father had died, and so did his uncle. Pei Qianshi was originally a young mistress of the county. For the sake of her son, she had suffered so much, and shed so many tears. How could the original owner be so heartless as to abandon everything to become an immortal? Furthermore, the system was formed from the original owner's spiritual treasure. It was not omnipotent, nor did it care about anything else. The missions that were issued were all related to the original owner's regrets. The first mission was to save Yi Su-er, and the second was to obtain an official's title. The main reason for obtaining an official's title was to save his mother, who was not even 40 years old, but already had white hair and wrinkles. Pei Ziyun spread out the xian paper and rubbed the ink. After a while, the ink had become sticky. He then picked up the brush and started writing. In just a short while, he had finished writing. The more he read, the more he felt that something was amiss. He could not read it at all. Pei Ziyun could not help but fall silent. The original owner's character was not considered high. He started studying at the age of 10. At this point in time, the past did not count. After 5 years, he finally managed to become an elementary scholar. Although he had inherited the original owner's memories, it did not equate to talent. Simply put, it was the same as reading other people's books. Although he had the memories, the essays he wrote could not become an elementary scholar. Of course, with the memories, he could save a few years of studying. But to become an elementary scholar, it would take another few years. How many more years could he and Pei Qianshi wait? In the original owner's memories, Pei Qianshi would pass away after 7 years of illness. As he thought about this, he was silent for a long time. He then picked up the essay given to him by his master and read it carefully. After a long time he sighed, "Such an essay, even if I spend a few more years studying it, it would not be enough. Then I can only cheat." The original owner was pedantic. He was secretly afraid of his own golden finger, but I am not afraid. The system only assigns tasks and unlocks privileges. Actually, according to the original owner's memories, the plum blossom's function is to steal spiritual and Tao. Pei Ziyun was in his room, with the window facing south. The window was half open, and a peach blossom was blooming outside. He was deep in thought. The plum blossom's petal has opened. Although I can't steal Tao, I can steal spiritual energy that does not contain any supernatural powers. That should be enough. Now I can find the spiritual object. This has a miraculous effect, and can increase my knowledge rapidly. If I want to become an elementary scholar, I have to start from here. I remember that Mr. Zhao is a Taoist. Although he is a teacher, he has a large collection of books. According to the original owner's memories, even if the contents are the heavenly golden book, I can't steal it. This is because it does not contain any spiritual energy. Only a scholar or a Taoist who painstakingly wrote it with their own hands and entrusted their wisdom to it. Only then can it be regarded as an object of entrustment for me to steal. Mr. Zhao has a library. Perhaps there is something in there that I need. I've already troubled Mr. Zhao today, and it's not appropriate for me to go there again. I can go tomorrow. Besides, I've been fighting in the night and am very tired. I shall rest for a day. Thinking this way, Pei Ziyun calmed himself down. Suddenly, he felt the fatigue in his body and mind. He collapsed onto the wooden bed, and before long fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 8. Snail Village. Morning. Pei Ziyun woke up early and started a fire. He cooked some porridge and started to study the scriptures. Flipping through the pages, he realized that even with his memory, some of the scriptures were unfamiliar. Reading and studying them was difficult, and he sighed in his heart. The original owner hadn't studied for more than 10 years. Naturally, he had neglected his studies. Not to mention that I didn't inherit much. Even if I did, I'm afraid it would be difficult to pass the capital examination in a hurry. Looks like I have to find a legacy as soon as possible. Under such circumstances, I can only inherit 70% of it. Pei Ziyun made up his mind to pay a visit to his master's house later to see if there were any legacies. If not, he would not be able to pass the examinations, but he could not place all his hopes on this. He had to study hard to be safe. Thinking this way, he picked up the book and started to study. The morning sun gradually sprinkled down from the sky, sprinkling on the thatched hut, the body, and the ground. The dew on the thatched hut evaporated, making it warm. There was a pond not far from the door. A little further away, some urchins were already leading cows or ducks into the field. The early spring was gradually warming up. Pei Qian got up and started coughing. After coughing for a while, she prepared breakfast. When she came out of the room, she saw Pei Ziyun reading a book. She was very satisfied and walked past him, not wanting to disturb him. Pei Qian entered the kitchen and saw that the fire was already lit. A pot of porridge was simmering on the stove, and the aroma filled the air. She cut up a few shallots and scooped up a bowl of pickled vegetables. She suddenly thought about how her son was studying so hard, and could not just eat porridge and pickled vegetables. But there was nothing in the house that could nourish his body. At this point, the sound of a hen clucking could be heard. It was one of the 3 old hens in the house. It had laid an egg, and had just come out of its nest at the back of the house. It was circling around the nest. Pei Qian was overjoyed and walked over to the nest. There were 3 of them. 2 of them could be given to her son, and the last one could be kept in the nest. He carefully brought it to the kitchen and started frying it. However, as soon as he inhaled the smoke, he started coughing uncontrollably. This woke Pei Ziyun up from his deep thoughts. When he heard his mother coughing, he walked into the kitchen. Seeing that his mother had already scooped up the porridge and was frying an egg, she started coughing uncontrollably. Pei Ziyun snatched the spatula from Pei Qian's hands and said, "Mother, let me do this. There's smoke, you're coughing badly." Pei Qian laughed and said, "As long as I'm careful, I'll be fine. You go and study. I've been doing household chores for over 10 years, why would I be afraid of this little bit of smoke?" She was about to retrieve the spatula when Pei Ziyun pushed his mother out of the kitchen. He rolled up his sleeves and placed the book by the side. Before long, he was done and scooped the soup into a bowl. Pei Qian placed 2 eggs into Pei Ziyun's bowl and said, "Ziyun, this trip to the capital examination will definitely be tough. Eat one more. Mother is getting old, it doesn't matter how much I eat." Pei Ziyun paused as he looked at his mother's haggard face. His heart was filled with sadness as he picked up one of the fruits and placed it in his mother's bowl. "Mother, you should eat one too. If not, I will feel guilty and won't dare to eat it." As he said this, he put down the chopsticks in his hands and looked at Pei Qian. Pei Qian looked at Pei Ziyun's eyes and knew that he was a filial son. If she didn't eat, then her son wouldn't eat either. Pei Qian didn't decline any more and lowered her head as she ate one mouthful at a time. Tears seemed to fall from her eyes. The meal didn't take more than a quarter of an hour before it was finished. Pei Ziyun raised his head and looked at the sky. There were a few clouds floating in the sky, and the sun was already high up in the east. They had just finished eating and Pei Qian was already preparing to sew. She picked up a needle and thread and went back to her room to start. Pei Ziyun walked over and said to Pei Qian, "Mother, yesterday I was reading the scriptures and realized that I was still lacking. Today, I'm preparing to go to teacher's house and ask for his help. But I have to inform you that I'm leaving now." "Son, go ahead," Pei Qian said and didn't say anything else. She then started to sew. He looked at his mother's hands and saw that there were cracks on them. This was caused by doing household chores all year round. He couldn't help but think to himself, no wonder the original owner wanted to take the imperial examinations to become a scholar. The plum blossom had started to appear when the original owner was 10 years old. At that point in time, he wasn't too sure. However, he had a successful experience of absorbing the plum blossom from a few old manuscripts. The original owner was naive at that time and was a bookworm. He was frightened by the plum blossom and thus wasted a few years. Of course, he wouldn't do that. Hence, Pei Ziyun headed towards Zhao Ning's house. At this time, in Zhao Ning's fenced yard, a young man was carrying a bow and arrows on his back. He held a dagger in his hands and was currently skinning some prey. With every swing of the dagger, he tore a hole in the prey's skin. At this point, Zhao Ning was drinking tea in his house. He held a book in his hands and was reading it carefully. All of a sudden, he felt something warm in his robes. Zhao Ning reached into his robes and pulled out a talisman. The talisman was glowing brightly. It was the 1,000-mile shadow talisman. Zhao Ning stretched out his finger and pointed at the talisman. A small ball of light appeared on the talisman, and a small figure appeared. Elder Zhao, how's the search for your reincarnated senior uncle? You haven't replied for a long time. Today, senior brother sect leader had a sudden impulse, and ordered me to ask. Haha, I was wondering why you would think of me as a wandering crane. So it was senior brother sect leader's orders. Please reply to senior brother sect leader that we have some leads. Many years ago, before senior uncle was reincarnated, his last words were to be in Snail Village. When he was born, his name would have the word Yun in it. I rushed over and found that there were 2 youths in the village who had the word Yun in their names. Dao arts are very precious, and I have been studying here to differentiate between the real and the fake. Based on the current situation, it seems that the person in the yard is the older one. Although he is the descendant of a hunter, he has the bones of wisdom, and his aura is similar. There's another one who moved here from another place. He has some poor ancestry, and is the descendant of a government official. It seems that he has a high chance of becoming an elementary scholar. He doesn't seem like the reincarnated senior uncle, but we have to be careful and investigate. Zhao Ning spoke up to this point and smiled. Speaking of these 2, they're both here. When the talisman heard this, it moved slightly, and the light looked outside. At this point, Pei Ziyun walked through the door and looked at the skinned youth. The original owner was very familiar with him, but this was the first time he had seen him. Looking at him carefully, he noticed that the youth had a pair of sharp eyebrows and a fierce look on his face. He was the son of a hunter in the village, and was said to be a reincarnated person. In the previous life, he had become an elder of the sect. Pei Ziyun had wanted to befriend him, but their relationship was still as cold as ever. At this point, Pei Ziyun did not reveal his thoughts and walked straight to the door. He knocked on the door and shouted, "Is teacher in?" This person is a person with poor ancestral virtue. Zhao Ning smiled and said to the talisman. With a wave of his hand, a light flashed and the talisman disappeared along with the talisman. When Pei Ziyun entered the room, he saw Zhao Ning drinking tea and reading a book leisurely, looking extremely carefree and relaxed. Teacher, yesterday you told me to come and learn from you before the examinations. Today I've come to bother you. Yesterday I went back to think about it, and realized that what I've learned is still too little. I don't have enough knowledge. Hence, today I've come to visit teacher to ask for a book to study. I hope teacher will agree to it. Pei Ziyun looked at his teacher and reported. AI, he's asking for a book to improve his knowledge. I thought he would ask how to take the examinations, but instead he's asking for a book to study. That's weird. Zhao Ning then replied, Ziyun, all the books I've collected are in the study room upstairs. You can go and get them yourself. Thank you, teacher, Pei Ziyun said respectfully as he walked up the stairs. The stairs were made of bamboo, and were very springy. After a few steps, he pushed open the door to the study room and entered. At this point, from the room below, a voice could be heard from the hidden talisman. Elder Zhao, you're teaching this kid. Could it be that you think he'll become an elementary scholar? Zhao Ning laughed and replied, now that the new dynasty has been established, there aren't many scholars. In this chaotic world, who would be able to study in peace? The standard of the examinations shouldn't be very high. Maybe there's hope. If this person is the reincarnation of senior uncle, then that would be a great story. As he finished, he picked up the book in his hands and poured himself a cup of tea. He then slowly drank the tea and read the book. Upstairs in the study room there were 5 bookshelves. The bookshelves were filled with books. Looking at them, many of them were written by teachers. Pei Ziyun thought to himself, in this world of Taoism, the seeds are obtained from scholars. Because only scholars can understand the meaning of Taoism. In my previous life, although there were stories of ordinary people becoming immortals, but in the Taoist canons, those who became immortals were all scholars. As he thought about this, he reached out to touch his teacher's book. The moment he touched it, the petal between his eyebrows seemed to have some reaction, but at the same time, it didn't seem like there was any reaction. He then mumbled to himself, "Looks like I was hoping for too much. Indeed, it's not possible. Even if there's a legacy in this book, as long as teacher is here, I can't obtain it." In order for a legacy to absorb Taoism, there have to be 3 criteria. It has to be truly ownerless, or it has to acknowledge me, or it has to be killed and taken away. I can't do any of these. As he thought about this, he casually flipped through the books on the shelves. He wanted to find a solid foundation, so that he could ask his teacher about it before he returned. As he thought about this, he flipped through the books and saw a thin book in his hand. The plum blossom trembled and a buzz could be heard. It had some reaction and he was overjoyed. This book had a legacy. He flipped open the book and saw that the essays were incisive, but there were many parts that he could not understand. He could not help but be delighted. He didn't bother flipping through the book any further, and hurriedly went downstairs. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, he stopped in his tracks. He was in too much of a rush, and if he left in such a hurry, he would give himself away. He steadied himself and calmed himself down. He then took the book in his hands and bade farewell to his teacher. "Ziyun, which book did you choose?" Zhao Ning asked. He then looked at the book inside. "So it's this book." From the tone of Mr.'s voice, "This book seems to have a history? I hope teacher can enlighten me." Zhao Ning sighed and said, "This is a compilation of an old elementary scholar from the previous dynasty. He had the potential to become a high scholar, but he was unlucky and met with chaos. His life's ambition was never fulfilled, and he passed away a long time ago. However, he wrote down his ambition in this book and left this book behind. It's a pity that his descendants didn't cherish it. His daughter sold it to me for only 10 copper coins. Ziyun, if you like it, I shall give this book to you. I hope that you will read more of this book, and fulfill the ambitions of his predecessors. Do not disappoint." Chapter 9. Hearing these words, Pei Ziyun could not help but be overjoyed. He had been thinking of ways to get his teacher to give it to him. This was an ownerless item, and as long as he was willing to give it to him, he would be able to absorb it. He cupped his hands and said, "I will not disappoint master." After Pei Ziyun left, the concealment talisman and the shadow appeared once again. Seeing Pei Ziyun leave, the shadow seemed to have sensed something. He then said, "That's strange." Just as he was about to give the book to Pei Ziyun, he seemed to have gained some good fortune. Could it be that the book was fated to be with him? With such a transformation, even if this kid isn't Marshall Uncle's reincarnation, he's definitely not an ordinary person. Zhao Ning paused and laughed. How can there be so many good karma? But since Shidi has said so, after this capital examination, I will test him again. I forgot to vouch for him just now. I'll send Zhang Yun to inform him tomorrow. Scholarly honors were a very serious matter. According to the regulations of the dynasty, the county examinations would be held in the county, and the one who passed would be a scholar. This rule was not very strict, and it was fine as long as the three examinees mutually assured each other. But to take the elementary scholar examination, one had to go to the county capital examination. Every student who wanted to participate in the capital examination had to register at the county's ceremonial office. They had to fill in their birthplace, name, age, 3 generations of history, and appearance. That was not all, but the county's elementary scholar had to vouch for them. They had to guarantee that they were from the county and that they had a clean background. They had to guarantee that they were not from the Chang, Yu, or Zhao families, and that they had no parents who had passed away. Zhao Ning, on the other hand, had the status of an elementary scholar. If not, he would not have been able to open the school. If he did not have some connections, he would have to pay 2 taels of silver to hire another elementary scholar as a guarantor. This was one of the sources of income for elementary scholars. However, Zhao Ning didn't think much of it. After so many years of observation, the possibility of Pei Zi Yun being the reincarnated senior uncle was extremely low. When Pei Zi Yun reached home, he hurriedly ate his lunch and closed the door behind him. At this point, the sunlight shone through the wooden window and into the room. Although it's not a good time to sleep, I can't take it anymore. Pei Zi Yun placed the book under his pillow and lay down. However, the effect of the plum blossom seemed to be very strong. Almost as soon as he laid down, before his head even touched the pillow, his vision blurred and he fell into a deep sleep. He heard the water lapping against the shore, rising, falling, rising again, falling again. When he woke up, he felt a slight chill on his body. A person wearing thin clothes was staring at a stack of paper in a daze. "Father!" Someone called out softly and picked up the candle wick with a hairpin. He then handed a cup of tea. "Father, it's late at night. You can't study like this. It's too tiring." The smoke of the tea rose in spirals, and the steam rose slowly. The tea was warm and fragrant. The man could be heard replying, "You are right. But in my entire life, I only know how to read." As he said this, he lowered his head and caressed the stack of manuscript. His voice was calm. "My daughter, I've studied my entire life and only managed to become an elementary scholar. Now that the world is in chaos, it seems that I will not be able to take the imperial examinations anymore. Actually, at my age, the imperial examinations are like floating clouds to me. It's just a testament to our studies. This book is the result of a lifetime of hard work. I'm old and I've become indifferent to many things, but this is the only book that I can't put down." The young girl in front of him was still unmarried. The man placed his hand on her forehead and said, "Your mother thinks that I'm useless and your brother doesn't like to study. There's no one in the family who can inherit the family's wealth. This manuscript will be your dowry. In the future, if you see a serious scholar, sell it to him for 10 copper coins." The young girl in front of him nodded her head and looked at him. The man smiled and said, "Don't worry. The manuscripts I write are meant for people to read. As long as there's someone who can inherit my knowledge, it doesn't matter if it's my son or not, I'll be satisfied." As he said this, the manuscript was suspended in the air. It was late at night and the wind had picked up. As soon as the wind changed direction, Pei Zi Yun woke up with a start. "It seems like I only slept for a short while." The afternoon sun shone on his body, and an indescribable feeling came over him. It was like he was in a trance, and yet he was happy and regretful at the same time. It's like a dream, but it's completely different. Is this the true use of the plum blossom? When a normal person awoke from a dream, they would still remember the contents of the dream, but it would disappear very quickly. But now it was completely different. There was no need for him to remember. Everything appeared in Pei Zi Yun's mind. In his dream, he had become an elementary scholar and owned a few acres of land. He did not care about business, nor did he care about farming. The only thing he cared about was studying. Studying, chanting every word, thinking deeply about every sentence. Day and night do not leave the house, day after day after year. The belt on my robe gradually loosened, and I have no regrets until I die. This was the first time in his life that Pei Zi Yun felt the spirit of an ancient scholar. It was much more profound than the words said. No, it was too profound. It was so profound that he could not forget it. At this point, Pei Zi Yun was in a daze. This was the first time in his life that Pei Zi Yun felt the spirit of an ancient scholar. It was much more profound than the words said. No, it was too profound. It was so profound that he could not forget it. At this point, Pei Zi Yun was in a daze. Was this what a scholar was like? In the previous life, Pei Zi Yun did not understand anything. The original owner's memories were half-baked. But at this point, he was like a scholar who had been studying for decades. It was as if he was a string that had been strung together by countless pearls. Combined with the original owner's memories, it was only a dream, but he was able to understand everything without a teacher. The meaning of the ink, the scriptures, the questions, the poems, and the most important of all, the entire process was imprinted in his mind. This is the plum blossom thief? The true use of the plum blossom is indeed too powerful. In an instant, he was able to obtain the fruits of decades of hard work. No wonder the original owner and that young Master Xie were able to rely on it to rise to power, and even suffer a calamity. But there are also many emotions and emotions that I do not have. Is this a side effect of absorbing the thoughts of the plum blossom thief? Pei Zi Yun was a rational and decisive person. At this point, he was able to sense this. Looks like there is a side effect of stealing the Tao of the plum blossom thief. Pei Zi Yun could not help but think. Snail Village, the next morning at this point, the sky was just beginning to brighten. A bright star hung in the sky. A youth with sharp eyebrows and a bow strapped to his back arrived at the entrance of the village. Zhang Dashan was standing guard at the entrance. When he saw someone approaching, he immediately woke up. Holding the bow, he pulled the arrow and pointed it at the person below the wall. With a trembling voice, he shouted, "You, who are you? What are you doing here?" Zhang Dashan was initially feeling sleepy, but when he saw a shadow appear, he thought it was a black-wind bandit. He woke up with a start. Seeing that there was only one person, he did not ring the alarm. When he got closer, he saw that the person was dressed in animal skin, not green robes, and did not have a black wolf head embroidered on it. The person walked closer to the door. It was a familiar figure. Just as he was hesitating, he heard the voice shout, "Uncle Dashan, I am Zhang Yun. Mr. Zhao has ordered me to return to the village. He wants to find my fellow disciple to discuss the matter of the imperial examinations. Hurry and open the door." I'm coming. So it's little Yun. You scared your Uncle Dashan. I thought it was the Black Wind Bandit. I was scared to death. Oh. Our village had a mud wall built last year, and these Black Wind Bandits still dare to come and attack us? Aren't they afraid of death? Zhang Yun frowned and asked. Why wouldn't they dare? 2 days ago, the Black Wind Bandits came to the village asking for food and women. Somehow, they died in the temple the next day. No one knows who killed them. Now, the entire village is in a state of panic. They are afraid that the Black Wind Bandits will come for revenge and attack the village. The young man raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He said coldly, "The village has dozens of village warriors, and even the mud wall. Why should we be afraid of these Black Wind Bandits? As long as we use some tactics, if these Black Wind Bandits dare to come, we will make sure they never return." When Zhang Dashan heard this, his body trembled. He knew that Hunter Zhang's son was bold, but he didn't expect him to be this bold. Zhang Dashan's body trembled as he looked to his left and right. Seeing that there was no one around, he hurriedly said, "You can't do that. If the Black Wind Bandits hear you, they will come and attack us. You may not be afraid, but we are." Zhang Dashan was so frightened that he waved his hands frantically. Don't say this again, don't say it again. Seeing how weak the village warriors were, Zhang Yun looked down on them. Even with the mud wall, the village did not dare to fight against the bandit. His father was not safe here. Although the village belonged to his clan, it seemed that he should persuade his father and himself to move away. If the bandits came and attacked, the village would be destroyed. Zhang Yun thought to himself. After entering the village, Zhang Yun walked straight towards his senior brother Pei Ziyun's house. Both of them lived in the same village, and naturally knew where the houses were located. Along the way they did not see many people. They walked straight towards his senior brother's house. At this time, Pei Ziyun had already woken up. Last night, he had dreamt of writing an essay. However, there were many unfamiliar feelings, and he did not dare to ponder over it. Today, he woke up with a sense of comfort. It was a feeling that could only be experienced after a good night's sleep. The feeling of unfamiliarity seemed to have disappeared. Looks like it's been digested. I'll wake up early today and start writing. Let's see how I'm doing. Once Pei Ziyun started writing, he could feel his thoughts flowing like a tide. After thinking about it carefully, he started writing. Within a short period of time, he had already written a few essays on the table, stacked on top of each other. Although I've gained the essence of the essay, I still need to practice more before I can make up for it. I have a 90% chance of passing the imperial examinations and becoming an elementary scholar. When that time comes, I can return to the village, and the Black Wind bandits will not dare to attack again. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard a knock on the door. It was a familiar voice. "Senior brother, are you awake? Last night, Master instructed me to come and fetch senior brother this morning. He said that the road has not been peaceful recently, and the bandits are running rampant. It would be best if your junior brother could protect you. Sorry for disturbing senior brother so early in the morning. I hope senior brother will forgive me." Pei Ziyun stood up and walked to the door. He hurriedly opened the door and saw a young hunter with sharp eyebrows. He was dressed in animal hide, and had a knife at his waist. He carried a bow and arrows on his back. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was his junior brother. Zhang Yun walked to the front of the house and saw an oil lamp. He was curious. He did not expect his senior brother to be reading under the lamp. His interest was piqued. He looked into the house and saw that there were several essays on the table. He was curious and walked in. He picked up one of the essays and started reading. It was very insightful, and he couldn't help but praise it. Very good. Pei Qianshi, who was next door, woke up. After a while, she walked out and saw that the lamp was still lit. She took a look and saw a young man with a knife at his waist, reading an essay. At this point, the young man turned around and saw a woman holding an oil lamp. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, Auntie. I am junior brother Ziyun. We are both disciples of Mr. Meng. Today, I was ordered by Mr. Meng to invite senior brother to the banquet. It's just that I am an impatient person, and came here early in the morning. I only managed to find a pheasant along the way. I hope Auntie will accept it." Zhang Yun handed over the pheasant in his hands. The pheasant's feathers were bright and beautiful. When Pei Qianshi held it in her hands, she felt that it was a little heavy. It weighed a few kilograms and she hurriedly declined. Zhang Yun insisted on giving it to his senior brother as a gift, saying that he had nothing else to offer. He wanted to give the pheasant to Meng Guan before he left. Pei Qianshi could not refuse and accepted it. Chapter 10. After some time, Zhang Yun said, "I am not a well-educated person, but from what I can see, senior brother's essay has already reached the pinnacle of perfection. This year's examinations will definitely be a success. Let's go to Mr.'s house first. Mr. has been rushing me since last night, asking me to come and fetch senior brother. He said he has something important to tell senior brother." As he finished, He picked up the essay on the table and dragged Pei Ziyun towards the guest house. Pei Ziyun was secretly delighted. In his previous life, he was not familiar with this person. It was only later that he found out that this person was a reincarnated person. Although he did not reach the same heights as he did before he was reincarnated, he became an elder of the sect. It was just that he was not familiar with him. Hence, he wanted to befriend him after he became an elementary scholar. He did not expect that he would come early this morning, and even seemed to admire him. They hurried along the way and arrived at Zhao Ning's house in no time. At this point, the sun had just risen, shining down on the bamboo forest and the courtyard. The sky was bright and clear. When the two of them arrived at the entrance of the courtyard, they saw Zhao Ning in the middle of the courtyard. He was holding a sword in one hand and the other was practicing sword technique. The two of them waited respectfully at the side, not daring to disturb him. In the previous life, when they were studying, they knew that this mister was proficient in sword technique. Every morning, he would wake up and practice. They thought that he was a scholar who was envious of a swordsman. When they met again, they realized that Zhao Ning was actually practicing sword technique. At this point, they understood. It's the Free Cloud sword technique, Free Cloud Sect's basic sword technique. I've already learned it by relying on the original owner's memories and the system. Oh yes, I've obtained the original owner's memories. I've acquired more than 10 different Dao techniques. Although most of them are Rogue Cultivators and Free Cloud Sect's Dao techniques, I can still give it a try. Although I've only been in this world for 2 or 3 days, why can't I remember such an important thing? Must I see Mr. Sword techniques before I remember? At this point, Pei Ziyun's heart was filled with dark clouds. At this point, he had finished practicing his sword technique. Zhao Ning turned around and saw his 2 students waiting respectfully. Seeing that Pei Ziyun was there as well, he asked, "Ziyun, why are you here so early today?" Pei Ziyun asked, "Didn't Mr. instruct my junior brother to call me? He ordered me to come early. This morning, when the sky was just beginning to brighten, Shitty was already home and dragged me here." Zhang Yun's sword-like eyebrows twitched and hurriedly replied, "The matter of the capital examination should be done sooner rather than later. Last night, I listened to teacher's instructions, and this morning, I went to the mountains to hunt a pheasant. Seeing that the sky was already bright, I was worried that I would be late for the capital examination, so I hurriedly went to fetch Senior." "Ha ha!" Zhao Ning burst out laughing. "Zhang Yun, Zhang Yun, I told you to invite your senior brother in the morning. I didn't expect you to come so early. You are so impatient." After saying that, he pretended to hit Zhang Yun. Zhang Yun dodged and dodged, rubbing his head with a silly smile on his face. Zhao Ning turned around and spoke to Pei Ziyun. "Since you're here so early, let's have breakfast together. Let me test you on your knowledge." Zhang Yun hurriedly took the manuscript that Pei Ziyun had written this morning and placed it in front of the teacher. "Teacher, I feel that senior brother's literary skills do not need to be tested. This morning, when I arrived at senior brother's house, I saw senior brother writing an essay. I read through it and felt that he had the demeanor of a teacher. Taking the examination would not be a problem." "Oh, is that true?" Zhang Yun did not intend to sit for the scholarly examinations, but he still had to study. He knew that his literary skills were not below Pei Ziyun's. It was just that he didn't want to sit for the imperial examinations. Hearing this, Zhao Ning couldn't help but be curious. He picked up the essay and read it carefully and was shocked. In just 2 days, Pei Ziyun had managed to link the contents of the book together. His intention was clear, and the weight was balanced, forming a whole. Compared to before, Pei Ziyun already had the ability to become an elementary scholar. Zhao Ning couldn't help but be suspicious. Just a few days ago, when Taoist brother saw Pei Ziyun borrow a high scholar's book, he felt that Pei Ziyun's fortune had increased. Looks like this book was indeed the source of his fortune. Could it be that Pei Ziyun was the reincarnation of senior uncle? Was that why his fortune was so deep? The suspicions in his heart grew. At this point, Zhao Ning couldn't help but ask, "What you're doing today is very different from what you did 2 days ago. What's the reason for this?" Pei Ziyun had long been prepared for this question. He clasped his hands and replied, "2 days ago, I borrowed the book from Mr. Zhao. When I went back to read it, I felt that my thoughts were clear. Today, when I wrote it again, I didn't know why, but I felt that it had reached a whole new level." Zhao Ning thought for some time. Looks like this book was accumulated by Ziyun. This book was like a wedge. Now that you've obtained it, you've managed to understand it. As he said this, he didn't speak any further about this matter. He then came up with another question. "Let me come up with another question to test you." Pei Ziyun looked at the question and thought for a while before writing an essay. He felt that this question wasn't too difficult, and was able to write it in a short amount of time. In his dreams, the old elementary scholar had written many essays of this level. Zhao Ning looked at his essay and praised it. "You have such talent, you've passed the elementary scholar mark, you've passed the elementary scholar mark." Zhao Ning then instructed Zhang Yun and Pei Ziyun to sit down. They then started eating and drinking. The three of them were enjoying themselves. When it was time to bid farewell, Zhao Ning went into his room and came out after a while. He then said, "This is the guarantee letter and this letter. I have a few good friends in the city. If anything happens, bring this letter and they will help you." Seeing this, Pei Ziyun was overjoyed. "Thank you, mister. Then let's go." At this point, Zhang Yun turned to Mr. Zhao and said, "Mister, when I went to the village this morning, I heard from the villagers that it hasn't been peaceful recently. There were bandits attacking the village. Mister, my senior brother doesn't know martial art. I shall protect him during the examinations." Zhao Ning raised his head and looked at his two disciples. He could see the intimacy between the two of them. One of them must be the reincarnation of his senior uncle, hence the intimacy between the two of them made sense. Zhao Ning couldn't help but praise them. "It should be so. You two go. Zhang Yun, you have martial arts skills, you should protect your senior brother." Zhang Yun replied, "Yes." Pei Ziyun looked at Zhang Yun and was secretly delighted. This person in his previous life was not discovered to be the reincarnation of his father. He already had martial arts skills, and his literary skills weren't bad either. It was just that he didn't care about the scholarly examinations. If he could protect Pei Ziyun, he would have no worries during the examinations. At this point, he remembered that he had sent Yi Su-er to Peach Blossom Monastery. Since he was going to the county to participate in the examinations, he decided to visit her. When he passed the examinations, he would bring Yi Su-er back. As he walked with his junior brother, they came to a junction. Zhang Yun saw this and hurriedly pulled Pei Ziyun back. "Senior brother, you're wrong, you're wrong. This is the way back to the village." Pei Ziyun slapped his forehead and remembered that he had forgotten to tell his junior brother, "Junior brother, I'm going to Peach Blossom Monastery. I forgot to tell you. Can you wait for a while? I'll be back soon." Zhang Yun looked at Pei Ziyun and grunted. Peach Blossom Monastery is a place where female priests live. The monastery leader is a good friend of Mr. Zhao. Why would a man like you go there? Don't tell me you have ill intentions towards Peach Blossom Monastery? Pei Ziyun sighed. "Junior brother, your thoughts are filthy. I'm a scholar, and we value etiquette. How could I not know that I'm going to Peach Blossom Gardens because of the Black Wind Bandit?" Zhang Yun heard this and became curious. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What does this have to do with the Black Wind Bandits?" Pei Ziyun then said, 2 days ago, the Black Wind Bandits came to the village demanding food and manpower. The women and children of the village forced Yi Su-er to hand her over to them." When Zhang Yun heard this, his eyes flashed coldly and he was enraged. "What? They even forced Yi Su-er? Is the village chief confused? Now that the village has a mud wall, and the imperial court is starting to settle down, do you think the Black Wind bandits would dare to openly attack the village? For the sake of the village's safety, even if they were to compromise and hand over some food, that would be fine. But how could they hand over manpower as well? If we are so weak, we won't be able to get any money from other villages. Next year, the bandits will definitely extort more from us. How could we pay the taxes then? In 3 to 4 years, the village will be destroyed. This old fool. Pei Ziyun sighed and did not speak. Most of the people in Snail Village had the surname Zhang, and were part of the same clan. He and Yi Su-er were outsiders. Luckily, he was a scholar and thus was not bullied. Pei Ziyun's eyes lit up. This situation was obvious to him. He didn't expect this person to be able to see through it as well. Indeed, immortal cultivators were not stupid. He then heard Zhang Yun say angrily, "When I returned to the village this morning, I heard Uncle Deshawn, who was guarding the gate, saying that 2 days ago there were bandits who came to ask for food and a beauty. The next day they died. I thought that the villagers must have secretly killed them. I didn't expect the villagers to be so scared that they prepared to send food and a beauty to appease the bandits." Zhang Yun spoke up to this point, feeling a little dispirited. He then slapped his head and said, "The person the village wanted to send was Yi Su. Isn't she your childhood sweetheart? Snail Village's #1 beauty? The villagers are really foolish. Don't they know that by doing this, they have offended me?" Zhang Yun knew that Yi Su-er and his senior brother had a close relationship. They were childhood sweethearts. If the villagers were to do such a thing, wouldn't it disappoint his senior brother? His senior brother would definitely become an elementary scholar in the future. The actions of the villagers would only bring bad luck to him. Pei Ziyun sighed and said, "That's right, the village wanted to send Yi Su-er away. I couldn't accept it. That night I brought Yi Su-er an escape. No one found us, and I went to the teacher for help. The teacher recommended the Peach Blossom Garden, and I sent Yi Su-er there. Today the teacher said that I can take the examinations, so I went. I wanted to say goodbye to Yi Su-er, and when I become an elementary scholar, I will bring her back. That way, the villagers will not dare to cause trouble." Zhang Yun then understood the reason and hurriedly said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I will keep this a secret for you, and will not leak a single word. Senior brother, just go and take the examinations." Pei Ziyun thanked him profusely. "Many thanks, junior brother." The two of them chatted as they walked. Although they did not speak much in their previous lives, in this life they had a great time chatting. Time flew by as they chatted. After a while, they saw the Peach Blossom Garden. Zhang Yun pointed to the Peach Blossom Garden and said, "Senior brother, the Peach Blossom Garden is just ahead. Senior brother can go there by himself." He then stood guard at the entrance, not following them in, as he wanted to keep a lookout for Pei Ziyun. Pei Ziyun bowed to Zhang Yun and said, "Many thanks, teacher." As he said this, he followed the path into the Peach Blossom Garden and headed towards the Taoist monastery. The Peach Blossom Garden had only been gone for 2 days, but it was now in full bloom. Butterflies and bees were flying around in the garden, collecting pollen. It was a lively scene. As he neared the Taoist monastery, he noticed that it looked the same as before. Only the signboard on the door had changed. It originally read Peach Blossom Garden, but now it read Peach Blossom Garden. Chapter 11. Just as Pei Ziyun was about to knock on the door, he heard a voice calling out, "Brother Pei." Wasn't that Yi Su-er's voice? Pei Ziyun turned around and saw a shadow leaping into his embrace. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was Yi Su-er. At this point, the little Taoist held a peach blossom in his hand and chased after them. Seeing Yi Su-er leaping into the embrace of a man, he blushed. Upon closer inspection, he realized that this man was the same young man who had sent Sister Su-er over. Today the teacher sent me over. Seeing that I'm familiar with the essay, he wants me to go to the capital city and participate in the examinations. I'm here to bid farewell. After the examinations are over and I become an elementary scholar, I'll come and fetch you. Yi blushed. At this point, the little Taoist said, "What a lovely couple. But look at the location, in front of our monastery, you two are hugging each other. Those who don't know better would think that our monastery is a filthy place." The little Taoist nun had a sharp tongue. At this point, Yi realized that she was hugging a man while wearing a female robe, which was very rude. She then separated from Pei Ziyun, and the two of them looked at each other. Pei Ziyun was thick-skinned and laughed. "What a mischievous little girl. You're so young and yet you have such a sharp tongue. In the future, whoever marries you will be in trouble." The little Taoist nun glared at Pei Ziyun and said, "I am a Taoist and will not marry. You are just a commoner. My monastery has accepted you as a wife, and you still dare to make fun of me. You are not a good person." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked away. Pei Ziyun realized that he had said something wrong and wanted to apologize, but the little Taoist nun had already left. Yi stood at the side and said, "Xiao is a monk. Brother Pei, don't say such things. If the monastery head finds out, he will be angry." At this point, Yi seemed to have thought of something and said to Pei Ziyun, "Brother Pei, wait a moment, I'll be there soon." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked into the monastery. Pei Ziyun laughed and waited at the door. Seeing the peach blossoms in full bloom, he walked closer to one of them. It was a beautiful sight to behold. The little Taoist boy was in the room, his face red as he threw himself on the bed. He hugged the blanket and swung his little feet, supporting his face with his hands. He was fuming. Just then, he heard a sound. It was Yi pushing open the door and entering the room. As soon as she entered the room, she began to search for it. After searching for a while, she could not find it. She anxiously stamped her feet and mumbled, "The talisman that I asked for is gone. I clearly put it here, why can't I find it?" Just as she was about to continue searching, she suddenly remembered that the little Taoist boy was angry just now and asked, "Xiao did you hide my talisman?" The Taoist nun replied angrily, "Who hid it? I wonder who was the one who held onto the wish talisman in the middle of the night, mumbling about wanting to give it to her brother Pei. In the end, she dropped it in the middle of the night and didn't even realize it. She even blamed someone else for taking it." As she said this, she did not look at Yi and turned her head away. Her eyes were filled with sadness and tears welled up in her eyes. At this point, Yi reacted and touched the bed. Indeed, the talisman had fallen onto the bed. Realizing that she had wronged the little Taoist boy, she hurriedly grabbed onto Xiao "Sister Xiao, I have wronged you. Don't be angry, I will apologize to you. Next time, I will catch 7 or 8 large butterflies for you." Seeing that Xiao was still ignoring her, Yi kissed her on the cheek and ran out of the room, leaving the little Taoist girl fuming on the bed. Outside the monastery, the sun shone down on him as he stood in front of the peach tree, quietly looking at the blossoms. He was deep in thought. If there's no time on the road, I should find a chance to cultivate my Tao arts. How could I have forgotten about this? Let's see if there's anything suspicious. Just as he was deep in thought, he heard a voice. Turning around, he saw Yi running out. Yi ran out of the monastery. Because she was running too fast, she almost tripped over the doorsill of the monastery. Luckily, she was fine. She walked up to Pei Ziyun and handed him a prayer talisman. "Brother Pei, you wish to become an elementary scholar. I heard that the Silver Dragon Temple is very efficacious, so I went to ask for it. I hope that Brother Pei will not lose this talisman. When you become an elementary scholar, we can repay the vow together." Pei Ziyun replied, "All right." Prefecture City. The county was not far from Dong'an Prefecture, and it only took 2 or 3 days to reach. The walls of the city were like a dragon, extending far and wide. The entrance of the city was like a whale swallowing up any passers-by or carriages. If one were to say that the county city was still in a state of chaos and desolation, the county city was already flourishing with people coming and going. Even the guards who were collecting the entrance fee were too busy to deal with it. Only when several people were busy at the same time could they catch their breath. Zhang Yun walked Pei Ziyun to the entrance of the city and was about to leave. At this point, Pei Ziyun urged Zhang Yun to stay and rest for the night. Zhang Yun refused and said, "Brother Pei, you can go by yourself. I shall make a move first." As soon as he finished speaking, he laughed and picked up his bow and arrows. He then walked off into the sunset. What an amazing person! Pei Ziyun thought to himself. However, this person was proud and arrogant. After the Free Cloud sect was destroyed, he died in battle. Although Pei Ziyun had some connections with him, it would be difficult for him to win his heart. After pondering for a moment, he saw a few waiters walking towards him. Even though it was daytime, each of them was holding a lantern in their hands. On the lantern were the words Li Family Inn, Bon Voyage, and White Cloud Inn. These were all inns that had come out to solicit customers. Seeing that Pei Ziyun was acting like a scholar, the few of them swarmed towards him. Pei Ziyun was not a stranger. The original owner of the body had been here many times. He pointed at one inn and said, "I am staying at this inn. Bon voyage." Hearing that he had made a decision, the waiters dispersed to look for other customers. Pei Ziyun followed them to the south. After turning a corner, he saw an inn. There was a large lantern hanging in front of the door with the words, "100-Year-Old Inn. Bon voyage." This inn had an auspicious name and was not expensive. The original owner of the body had stayed here many times. He walked in without hesitation and said, "Waiter, once I've booked a room, bring me some hot water." "Yes, please wait a moment." At this point, Pei Ziyun heard someone exclaim, "Isn't this Brother Z1? Why are you here alone?" He turned around and saw a few familiar faces. They were his friends from the previous examinations. He then stood up and bowed. "So it's Brother Li, Brother Wang, Brother Tang. Since I'm the only one who came to take the examinations, I have to come alone." At this point, a feminine voice sounded out, "You've searched far and wide for me. Isn't this the Slow River County Prince, the three scholars Li and Tang? You're going to the banquet as well? It's a pity that your Slow River County will not be able to make it to the top." As soon as he finished, he strode past without even looking at the four of them. Behind him, the few scholars laughed out loud as well. "You!" The three of them saw this person's arrogance and were enraged. Pei Ziyun looked over and saw this scholar, dressed in elegant robes, holding a fan in his hand. He then walked away, leaving the three of them staring at each other and cursing, "What an arrogant and despicable person." At this point, the waiter served Pei Ziyun the pancake he had ordered, along with a bowl of soup. There were some spring onions floating on top of the soup, and some meat inside. Pei Ziyun knew that he was a scholar, so he specially added this. Pei Ziyun wasn't sure of the reason for the earlier incident, and didn't want to argue. He sat down and was about to eat when he saw Scholar Tang grumbling to the other two, "That's right, our Slow River County hasn't been doing well for the past few years. Our results aren't good, that's why we're being looked down upon. Tonight we shall go and humiliate them." The others agreed, Go. We must humiliate them, only then will they know that our Slow River County has talent." Just as he was about to leave, he saw Pei Ziyun's calm expression as he drank the soup and was about to eat the pancake. He couldn't help but think of how the magistrate had praised Pei Ziyun for his talents during the banquet. Scholar Tang hurriedly said, "Ziyun, what's so good about this pancake? We shall bring you to the banquet. I know that Ziyun is a genius. This time we shall teach them a lesson. Let's go. As he said this, He stretched out his hand and pulled Pei Ziyun along. Pei Ziyun tried to decline, but the others refused. He had no choice but to follow. The distance wasn't far, and after walking for a while, they reached their destination. Pei Ziyun looked and saw a wine shop in front of him. It was close to the waterway and was also close to a relay station. The relay station had a courier, and was extremely safe. Just by being close to the waterway there would be customers. He thought to himself that the owner of this place had good foresight. Scholar Tang couldn't help but exclaim, "Good handwriting! The handwriting isn't bad, but there's no bone in the strokes, and the charm is lacking. It can't be considered good." Pei Ziyun had received the inheritance from the old elementary scholar, and thus spoke. As he spoke, he followed the flow of people into the wine shop. As people walked to and fro, a waiter came forward to welcome them. Scholar Tang then handed the invitation card to the waiter. The waiter took a look and invited the four of them up. "The entire third floor has been booked. Sirs, please head up." It was noon, and the surface of the restaurant was bathed in sunlight. The lake was rippling, and the willow trees were swaying gently in the breeze. There was also a lady playing the pipa singing. This wasn't the best restaurant in the prefecture, but it was located in a bustling area, and occupied a large area. The waitresses within the restaurant were all young ladies, and some of the older ones were in charge. As the four of them walked up to the third floor, they saw that the entire third floor was covered with a small screen. This separated them from each other, and allowed them to see each other. There were more than 10 tables lined up, and the dishes had already been served. The tables on the west side were still empty. There were already 70 to 80 students participating in the capital examination seated. Seeing this scene, Scholar Tang stepped forward and found a seat, pulling it open and sitting down. Scholar Tang's full name was Tang Zhen. He was the son of a wine merchant in the county. He loved to read and was quite famous in the county. He was good at drawing and was rather knowledgeable. The two of them did not remember his name, but knew that his literary skills were not bad. Not too far away, the scholars who had provoked the four of them were talking to a scholar in the middle who looked like a gentleman. One of the scholars glanced over and said something in a low voice. The gentleman looked over and let out a burst of laughter. The examination was like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. There was a limit to how many people could take part in it. Every time the examination was held, there would be no one else. The three of them looked on and were enraged. Pei Ziyun remained calm and thought to himself, "Is this Ma Ji who took the high scholar exams in my previous life?" In the original owner's previous life, this person was the son of an official in the capital city. He looked down on the people in the county, and would mock them whenever he saw them. However, his literary skills were not bad. At the age of 14, he became an elementary scholar, and at the age of 19, he became a high scholar. It was a pity that he did not last long, and died at the age of 21. Why did it seem so contradictory? When they entered the banquet hall, Pei Ziyun looked at the table and saw a dazzling array of dishes laid out on the table. In front of him was a bowl of abalone porridge. The freshly cooked freshwater fish was mixed with the porridge, and some spring onions were sprinkled over it. It emitted a light fragrance, and when one smelled it, one would feel hungry. On the side, there was a bowl of boiled black-bone chicken. Some herbs were sprinkled on it, and the soup was red in color. Tang Zhen did not pay much attention to the food. His family was considered wealthy. He looked down and saw the chicken, and exclaimed, "This is a 10-piece chicken, everyone eat." He picked up his chopsticks and started eating. Chapter 12. Pei Ziyun could not help but laugh as he picked up his chopsticks and started eating. He thought to himself, "This banquet costs a lot of money. What's the purpose of this?" The original owner of the body had some memories of this banquet. He had been here once and listened to the conversation. After a while, he understood what was going on. So this is a banquet organized by a high scholar. Although this high scholar was a high scholar from the previous dynasty, he was still respected by the new dynasty. He loved to read and was good at managing money. He was one of the wealthiest people in the city. Because he was a high scholar from the previous dynasty, he did not become an official. Every year, this banquet is held. The top 10 students from the 7 counties in the prefecture are all invited. Even the most famous scholars from the city are invited. Not only is there a banquet, there's also a literary event later on. The students are invited to compose poems and receive pointers from the seniors. If they are able to stand out from the crowd, not only will they be rewarded handsomely, they will also become famous. These students were here because of this literary event. At this point, he heard a commotion in front of him. The high scholar from the previous dynasty had arrived. Pei Ziyun looked up and saw a dignified old man in front. This old man did not show his emotions. He was talking to the high scholar as he walked up the stairs. Behind him were 2 people. This high scholar looked to be in his 40s and had a mustache. His attire was nothing out of the ordinary. What left a deep impression was his dark eyes, which seemed to stare at people with a mysterious gaze. Pei Ziyun ate slowly, deep in thought. He recognized this high scholar. It was Yu Qiushan. This old man was obviously an official. Only an official would behave in such a manner. Pei Ziyun thought for a while and remembered. It's the high scholar from the prefecture, Fu Yuan. Fu Yuan was a minister in the Ministry of Rites, and had already retired. As the 2 of them sat down, someone stood up and said, "This student is bold enough to throw a brick to attract jade." The people in front were either singing or reciting poems. After a while, another person stood up. As soon as this person stood up, everyone turned to look at him. This young man was dressed in a green robe. Under the light of the lantern, he looked very confident. This attracted the attention of Fu Yuan and Yu Qiushan. Pei Ziyun raised his head and saw this person. His eyes turned cold. Zhang Jieyu. Speaking of this person, he did not have much of a relationship with the current Pei Ziyun. Speaking of the original Pei Ziyun, it could only be said that he had a slight conflict with the original Pei Ziyun. Just a simple mistake from this person had caused the original Pei Ziyun to waste several years of his life. Suddenly, he thought, it seems like Yu Qiushan and Zhang Jieyu are related by marriage? At this time, another person wrote a poem and received the elder's praise. Tang Jin was furious. After a while, Fu Yuan's topic was sent over. It was based on the scene outside the restaurant and requested that the topic be the fisherman. This was a literary banquet and it was not restricted to one style. Those who came could choose not to do it, and those who were confident could sing a poem on the spot. The 3 of them were still deep in thought when Pei Ziyun looked outside. Coincidentally, he saw someone on a fishing boat passing by. He then instructed the waiter to bring some ink and paper over. The 3 of them were shocked and surrounded him. They saw that Pei Ziyun had written the poem in a few strokes. Tang Jin took the poem and read it out loud unknowingly. Fisherman. The fisherman stands by the west cliff at night, burning bamboo in the clear Xiangxiang at dawn. The smoke was extinguished and the sun was gone. The scenery was green. Looking back at the middle of the sky, the heartless clouds chasing each other on the cliff. What a good poem! As soon as he finished speaking, the others were still silent. Yu Qiushan's eyes lit up and he praised the poem loudly. Fu Yuan, who was beside him, nodded his head as well. In a short while, the poem was passed around and everyone applauded. The poems were passed around and everyone was chatting. From time to time, the shop assistants would respond to the scholars' requests by handing them brushes, ink, paper, and ink stones. Many of the scholars picked up the brushes and started writing. There were even some scholars who casually put away the brushes, ink, paper, and ink stones that they had used up. Pei Ziyun stood up and scooped a bowl of soup. Seeing the scholars taking away the ink and paper, The waiter did not care and let the scholar do as he pleased, pretending not to see anything. Just as Pei Ziyun was puzzled, he saw someone looking at him. Pei Ziyun turned around and saw Ma Ji holding his poem and reading it to a scholar. When he saw Pei Ziyun, Tang Zhen, Scholar Wang and Scholar Li sitting together, his expression changed and he glared at them fiercely. At this point, Wang Tongxing, who was sitting on the right, saw Pei Ziyun glaring at him and glared back fiercely. The group of people were separated by a few tables and were in conflict. At this point, Pei Ziyun realized that Tang Zhen, Scholar Wang and Scholar Li were hiding something. The three of them must have had some sort of relationship with Ma Ji and his group. Just as he was about to ask, he heard a commotion in front of him. Someone was calling out to Pei Ziyun from the front. Wang Tongxing nudged him and said, "Ziyun, your essay is not bad. They are calling you up." As he said this, he pointed to the table in front. Fu Yuan and Yu Qiushan were talking about Zhang Jieyu. From Pei Ziyun's point of view, Zhang Jieyu was very carefree and elegant. He listened to their comments and occasionally responded to Fu Yuan's words. Seeing Fu Yuan and Yu Qiushan, he was very satisfied. So, this literary gathering is organized to have our own people support us. Pei Ziyun understood immediately. At this point, he did not have any stage fright and went up. At this point, another person went up as well. Seeing the three of them standing side by side, they clasped their hands together and bowed. They were all handsome and elegant youths. Fu Yuan sighed and said, "What elegant youths!" Following this, he gave his comments one by one and announced the rankings. This Zhang Jieyu was in first place, while another person was in second place. Pei Ziyun was in third place. It was just that Fu Yuan looked at Pei Ziyun and Yu Qiushan, and did not engage in idle chatter like he did with Zhang Jieyu. After the rankings were announced, a servant carried a tray up to the table. Looking at the tray, he saw that the first person had a painting on it, while the second person had an inkstone. The painting had not been unfurled, and hence nobody could see it clearly. As for the inkstone, everyone could clearly see that it was an ancient inkstone. It was carved with plum blossoms, with red stamens in the middle of the plum blossoms. One of the scholars pointed out the inkstone and said, "This is a tribute from the Mei Mountain of the previous dynasty, the red plum inkstone. This inkstone is famous for its literature. Most of the pieces that have been sold were bestowed by the emperor. Ever since the chaos of the previous dynasty, the Mei Mountain inkstone has not been excavated for some reason. Hence, it is rare to find it. Most of the people have collected it, and kept it in their homes to suppress their literature." The scholar was able to recite the name of the inkstone in one breath. Hearing the scholar's words, the other scholars understood the value of the inkstone. Their eyes couldn't help but look at the inkstone. Even Fu Yuan was moved. He looked at the inkstone and said to Yu Qiushan, "Zhirun, Zhirun. I told you that you had the Mei Mountain inkstone, but you said you didn't have it. You even tried to hide it, and insisted on giving it away in front of me at this banquet. Aren't you afraid that I will get angry and drag you out to be punished?" Yu Qiushan laughed and said, "Brother Pingan, if you want to drag me out to be punished, then drag me out. But don't even think about this Mei Mountain inkstone. If I knew this would happen, I would have tortured you more." Fu Yuan, whose courtesy name was Pingan, looked at Yu Qiushan and felt that something was amiss. He then asked, "Zhirun, this inkstone was given to you by your teacher in the previous dynasty. All these years, I've been thinking about this inkstone, but you've always refused to give it to me. Today, you've even used it as a prize." That's not right, that's not right. Tell me honestly, what's the reason? If you have any difficulties, just tell me. Yu Qiushan sighed, "Brother Pingan, these past few days, I've been feeling that I don't have enough energy. I'm worried that if this inkstone were to remain in my hands, it would be buried with me. Why not give it to these young scholars?" Looking at them, I feel like I'm reminded of my old days. As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes, and both of them fell silent. Only then did Pei Ziyun notice the person in second place. This youth had an elegant demeanor, with delicate features and delicate features. His eyes were as bright as ink, exuding an aura of wisdom. He was dressed in embroidered robes, with a jade pendant hanging from his neck. The jade pendant gleamed as he looked at the inkstone. Pei Ziyun looked at the May Mountain inkstone, and couldn't help but feel moved. However, this wasn't his fate. He then looked at the third place, and saw a book and a silver ingot. Pei Ziyun looked at his own prize, and thought about how generous the other two were. He frowned. But then he thought about it. This was a competition where people were giving out treasures and money. Of course he had to make a name for himself. It would be good if he could get some benefits. At this point, Yu Qiushan was about to give out the prizes when Fu Yuan stopped him and said, "Ji Run, I've been waiting for this prize of yours for a long time. Since I can't have it, let me be the one to give it out." Yu Qiushan couldn't help but laugh. He then sat down and said, "Brother Ping and you." He then sat back down. The prizes were given out, and when it was Pei Ziyun's turn, Fu Yuan picked up the book. His expression changed, as if he was surprised. However, he hid it very quickly, and no one else saw it. Pei Ziyun was standing close to him, and saw the change in his expression. He felt it was strange, and didn't know why, but the old man said some words of encouragement. The top three were very grateful, and returned to their seat. At this point, Tang, Wang, Li and the three scholars crowded around to see what the prize was. The second-place prize was obvious to all, and was extremely valuable. Hence, they were curious as to what the book was. Some of the books also crowded around. They saw that the main character was holding the book in his hands, and saw that it was the flower-picking records. So this book was written by Yu Qiushan. Seeing this record, the crowd dispersed. Originally, they thought that it would be a valuable prize, and didn't expect it to be written by high scholar Yu. Tang, Wang and Li, the three scholars, felt that it was rather dull, and didn't care much about this book. Pei Ziyun held the book in his hands, and didn't feel anything. He was a little disappointed. He then flipped through the book, and read a few pages. This book was written by the old high scholar himself, and was easy to understand. It was just that the book didn't seem to contain anything. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. He then thought about it, and realized that he had already gotten such a good reward. If he wanted more, he would be a little greedy. He smiled, and kept the book and the silver in his robes. The silver in his hands was rather heavy, and he weighed it in his hands, and estimated that it weighed about 10 taels. When the rankings were announced, and the prizes were given out, the students all felt that this trip had not been in vain. They hated themselves for not being able to place in the rankings, and were somewhat vexed. They were envious of the top three. Amidst the envy, there were a few people who looked at Pei Ziyun and the others with dissatisfaction. The banquet had just ended when Ma Ji led a group of people away in a hurry. Tang, Wang and Li followed Pei Ziyun down the stairs. At this point, Pei Ziyun remembered the look in Ma Ji's eyes, and was about to ask him about it when Tang Jin said, "Ziyun, why didn't you take the brush, ink and paper with you? Those are the 4 treasures of the study." Pei Ziyun was taken aback, and asked, "These belong to the master, how can I take them away so easily?" Seeing Pei Ziyun's puzzled expression, the 3 of them laughed out. Ziyun, you've lost out big this time. You have to know that these brush, ink and paper can all be taken away. These were given to you by the old high scholar. Didn't you hear that a scholar stealing a book isn't considered stealing? You forgot to tell Ziyun about this. Pei Ziyun did not understand the reason behind this and asked, "What's the reason?" The 3 of them were overjoyed and drank some wine. They then started talking at once. There's an inside story here. It turns out that during the previous banquets, some poor scholars saw that the 4 treasures of the study were all of high quality, and were moved. Hence, after they finished writing their poems, they would sneak away. After the banquet, there would always be less of them. When High Scholar Yu saw this, he immediately announced that the 4 treasures of the study would all be given to the scholars. After the banquet, they could collect them themselves. This was a sign of the flourishing of literature. Chapter 13. Pei Ziyun squinted his eyes and stopped in his tracks. He thought to himself, he's trying to attract people's support. But the banquet is only held once every 3 years. Since High Scholar Yu doesn't build roads, it's not considered a taboo. It seems like he's trying to form a good relationship with his disciples. The 3 of them were chatting as they walked down the stairs and out of the private room. The place below was bustling with noise and excitement. Pei Ziyun was about to ask about Ma Ji. This Ma Ji will be taking the High Scholar exams in a few years. Why does it seem like there's a conflict? At this point, he heard a commotion. Pei Ziyun furrowed his brows and turned around. He saw a Taoist sitting at a table. This Taoist was wearing a faded Taoist robe. There were a few bowls on the table, all of which were empty. The Taoist was still drinking from a jug of wine. A waiter was scolding the Taoist. "You Taoist, you ordered a table full of good wine and meat. I tried to talk to you nicely, but you said you didn't have a single cent. Let me kick you out. Our Lake Mirror restaurant is very reputable. How can we beat people up so easily? You Taoist looks like you have a good physique. It's not hard for you to work and earn some money. Why do you have to be so lazy?" The group of scholars walked down the stairs, wondering what was going on. It turned out that this Taoist wanted to dine and dash. The waiter was rather polite and didn't beat him up. Pei Ziyun looked at the Taoist and saw that he was covered in dirt and was in tatters. The many bowls of good meat on the table had all been eaten clean. He couldn't help but think of the novels he read in his previous life. His heart stirred and he walked up to the table. The Taoist ignored the waiter's words and started scratching his ears. The waiter was at a loss of what to do. Just as he was about to speak to the innkeeper, a scholar walked up to the table and asked, "Waiter, how much did this Taoist spend? I'll pay." When the waiter saw that someone had come to pay, he was overjoyed and reported, "This Taoist ate a bowl of braised tripe, a bowl of steamed crab, a bowl of chicken, a bowl of black chicken porridge, a few bowls of mutton and 3 jugs of aged wine, all of which cost 1 tael of silver." 1 tael of silver? When Pei Ziyun heard this number, he felt his heart ache. In this world, silver was very precious. 1 tael of silver was used sparingly. In the village, it was equivalent to a family's annual expenses. Gritting his teeth, he took out a tael of silver and handed it over. This Taoist was originally planning to dine and dash, but he did not expect that a scholar would pay the bill. He couldn't help but feel surprised. The other 3 were also surprised, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, the 3rd floor was still being tidied up. There was no sound from the 4th floor. Zhang Jieyu went up and saw that there were 2 guards on the stairs. When they saw him coming, they stood aside and made way for him. When Zhang Jieyu reached the 4th floor, he saw a room with red pillars. The door was ajar, and he could vaguely see a screen and a bookshelf. At this point, he heard Yu Qiushan's voice. "Is that you, nephew? Come in and talk." "He's here." He saw Yu Qiushan sitting on a carved wooden armchair. Not far from him, there was a man sitting on a small stool. He looked to be in his 40s. He was dressed in a green robe, and his eyebrows were slender and his eyes were like a phoenix's. He looked very refined, and had a scholarly air about him. However, he seemed to have the smell of alcohol and women. He could not help but smile. Hence, he bowed and said, "Uncle, Mr. Li." Mr. Li smiled and nodded his head. It seemed like he was a man of high status. He was currently writing down a list of names and arranging them in order. He then handed over a list and said, "Senior brother, for this year's literary banquet, I'm afraid all of the students who have the potential to become elementary scholars are here. Just as Zhang Jieyu was about to ask, he heard Yu Qiushan look at the list and said, "Wenjing, these people have a good family background. Their ancestors are very honorable, and they have long been favored by the imperial qi. Do not touch them. Just delete them from the list." Yes. Li Wenjing seemed to have been prepared for this, and immediately took a piece of paper. Yu Qiushan's eyebrows twitched as he thought for a while. He then continued, "If they are too famous, just delete them. Otherwise, it will attract too much attention." He then sighed. After all, our holy sect is not like those loose cultivators. Only those loose cultivators would casually look for disciples from the common people to inherit their teachings. Nowadays, which sect doesn't look for intelligent and intelligent disciples among the elementary scholars? It's just that this has already violated the imperial qi's taboo. Since their ancestors are very honorable, and they have long been favored by the imperial qi, they should not be touched. If they are too famous and attract too much attention, they should not be touched either. Those low-ranking students have limited intelligence and are not very useful. Hence, they should not be touched. Apart from these people, we can just choose the top 10. But we are not completely sure yet. Once the examinations are over, we can choose from the elementary scholars. Zhang Jieyu knew that these words were meant for him to hear. He had already decided on the candidates to enter the sect. At this point, according to the rules of the sect, he greeted Yu Qiushan, "Master." Yu Qiushan then said, "These people, as for how to bring them into our sect, it will be up to you, my future senior brother. In the future, these matters will have to be handled by you. Do not feel that it is a waste. Holy sect is not a mountain of gold and silver. Between the prefectures, we should try our best not to use Tao arts, in order to avoid offending the heavens and the imperial qi. But we are not ordinary people, and it is relatively easy for us to manage our businesses. Hence, you do not have to feel bad about the expenses of this literary banquet. It's just that once you enter the holy sect, or any other Tao sect, you will at most be a high scholar. Furthermore, you will not be able to become an official. This is something you must remember." As he finished speaking, Yu Qiushan drank his tea without saying another word. It was originally a sunny day, but now the clouds were hanging low in the sky. The entire building was shrouded in darkness. The wind chimes under the eaves were tinkling. Zhang Jieyu hurriedly said, "Of course I know this. If I become an official, the imperial qi will destroy my Tao foundation. Naturally, I will not be able to cultivate and become an immortal." Li Wenjing was checking the name list when he laughed and joked, "It's good that you know. But if you become a true sovereign, you might be able to. Everything under the heavens, and the feelings of the human world, it is easy to look down, but difficult to look up and be confused. That's the general idea." Zhang Jieyu laughed bitterly. "Senior uncle, please don't joke with me. This Li Wenjing loved wine and women, and was not good at Tao art. However, he was a smart and capable person. All the businesses in the world were controlled by him, and his position was not low at all." Zhang Jieyu laughed and paused before asking, "On the name list, is there a Peiziyun? I can see that his poems and writings are considered good, and he doesn't seem to be affected by the imperial qi." Yu Qiushan's eyelids twitched as he took a sip of tea and said, "I was just about to talk about this person. My holy sect has a technique called the minor art of divination. We can see a person's fate and fate. If you can see this, you must have some skill. A person's fate is fixed and unpredictable. You cannot be greedy, nor can you sit and wait. This Peiziyun's looks and temperament are not very outstanding. From the looks of it, he seems to have some ancestral virtues and good fortune. To be able to become an elementary scholar is already not bad. Furthermore, he won't be able to become an elementary scholar this year. But this person's scholarly aura is being nurtured, and there is a faint light shining from the top of his head. He has studied and understood the meaning behind it. As he said this, Yu Qiu-shan had some doubts in his heart. It seems like he is very knowledgeable, at least for this capital examination. It's very possible that he can change his fate. You should know that these methods of divination are mostly vague. The holy sect's Tao arts, in this world, are obstructed by things and desires. You have to break through them. How can this be easy? As he said this, Yu Qiu-shan couldn't help but laugh. He then said, "This kind of person, you can give it a try, but you don't have to be stubborn." Zhang Jie, you seem to be deep in thought. What Master is saying is that this kind of person has many uncertainties, and may not be beneficial to the sect, so we don't have to be stubborn. Your understanding is correct. A few years ago, the sect would have taken him in. But now, we have put on our shoes and are on the shore. This kind of person has many uncertainties, we have to take it slow. Zhang Jieyu was enlightened. I understand now. The four of them returned to the inn and said their goodbyes. Pei Ziyun was a little tipsy. It turned out that during the banquet, the three of them saw that Pei Ziyun had gotten third place, and had defeated the person who had mocked them. They were very happy and hence forced Pei Ziyun to drink a lot of wine. This wine had a strong after-effect, and Pei Ziyun did not feel it at first. But now, after an hour, he had returned to his room. The waiter boiled a large bucket of hot water and brought it to his room. After washing up, he rested on his bed for a while and thought to himself, "Finally, I can have some free time." Turned out that when he saw the Taoist, he remembered that he had Tao arts in his previous life, and felt that it was strange that he had forgotten about it so often. He wanted to rush back to his room to cultivate, but was stopped by the three of them, who did not allow him to walk alone. The three of them were a little tipsy and had drunk a little too much. Hence, it took some time before they returned to their room. At this point, he noticed that the alcohol had dissipated quite a bit. Although drinking wine was not suitable for cultivating, there was no harm in giving it a try. He then recalled the memories of the original owner and thought to himself, in the previous life, the original owner had lost the chance to meet Zhao Ning. But he was fortunate enough to obtain the notes of a rogue cultivator, and was entrusted with something. Although this sutra extension diagram is shallow, it is very practical. Anyone with some spiritual wisdom would be able to gain inspiration immediately. It is the most effective. Furthermore, the foundation can be completed according to the level, although the speed is slower. After the original owner entered Free Cloud sect, the evaluation was that it was an authentic foundation method, and he even gained some merits for entering the Tao. Let me give it a try. Pei Ziyun then sat down cross-legged and started to cultivate according to the Tao arts. As he recited the incantation, he started to cultivate. The original owner had obtained the Tao arts in less than an hour, and thought that cultivating it would be easy. After a long time, he still had no result. Pei Ziyun wore only his undergarments and looked out the window. He took out a book and looked at it, but was not interested. He frowned and thought to himself, this technique, if a normal person had some spiritual sense, they would be able to cultivate it. It's just that their progress would be too slow. Why can't I? In the previous life, I was able to cultivate it in less than an hour. In this life, I have gained nothing. Could it be that, after changing my soul, this body is gone? Just as he was pondering this, the plum blossom between his eyebrows lit up, and a message entered his mind. Pei Ziyun then understood the reason. This body, the original owner's spiritual roots, are gone. True Sovereign Xie's restrictive spells were extremely vicious. In order to prevent the original owner from cultivating the Tao arts, even his spiritual roots were taken away. Now, although I have obtained the plum blossom, this body has lost its spiritual root. I have to find a new one. Cultivating now is useless. Hence, I have forgotten about it for the past few days. If I want to cultivate, I have to find a cultivator's legacy to make up for it. This legacy contains the cultivator's spiritual root. Even if it's just a tiny bit, it's enough. Thinking up to this point, a small white plum blossom appeared in front of him. It grew bigger and became a translucent information interface. A mission appeared. Mission 1. Save Yi Sewer completed. Mission 2. Attain elementary scholar status, incomplete. Mission 3. Obtain a cultivator's legacy, incomplete. Taking a closer look, it was the content of the information interface. He didn't think that this exploration would result in a new mission. Pei Ziyun was in a dilemma, as he did not know how to proceed. He was not a cultivator. How could he come into contact with a cultivator, and how could he obtain a legacy? Pei Ziyun lay on his bed, deep in thought. After a long time, he said, "I don't care anymore. The examinations are coming up soon. I have to attain elementary scholar status first." Chapter 14. Prefectural examination. Early in the morning, the sky was slightly white, and the fog was still present. Not far away, a boat was slowly moving along the river. Pei Ziyun held a lantern in his hand, and carried the examination basket, as he headed towards the examination grounds. This prefecture has 7 counties. Line up according to the county. Do not make any noise. 3 muffled sounds could be heard from within the academy. Soldiers lined up and someone shouted. The Sui dynasty established a system. The county schools were called academies, the prefectures were called academies, the provinces were called academies, and the central government was called academies. The Changzhou Prefectural Academy had its own system. Early in the morning, the air was chilly. Under the starlight, there were a total of 7 corridors, all of which were blocked by wooden fences. The examinees carried their examination baskets and lined up to wait. Pei Ziyun found his way to the gates of Slow River County and saw a group of people standing there with lanterns in their hands. Someone then said, "Brother Pei, you're here." Pei Ziyun looked over and saw that the person who had spoken was Tang Jun. Beside him, Wang and Li snorted coldly and did not speak. Pei Ziyun didn't think much of it and greeted Tang Jun. He then smiled at Wang and Li without saying a word. A few days ago, the 3 of them had invited him to the literary meet. Pei Ziyun saw that the examination date was nearing and rejected them. Tang Jun didn't mind, but the 2 of them bore a grudge against him. With such a big heart and brain, it's no wonder he's not an elementary scholar. Pei Ziyun thought about how the 2 of them were still hoping that the principal scholar would reveal some of the questions and curse them for being so stupid. Under these circumstances, how could the principal scholar give any pointers on the questions? Wouldn't that be akin to giving someone a handle on the questions and causing a huge scandal? At this moment, the 2 of them cupped their hands together and chatted for a while. None of them were in the mood to talk, so they kept their mouths shut. Under the system of the Sui dynasty, the county tested its students, the prefecture tested its elementary scholars, and the province tested its high scholars. This was somewhat different from the imperial examinations of Pei Ziyun's original world, but that was normal. It would be strange if they were exactly the same. Purring, purring, purring. A muffled drum sounded. The fish door slowly opened. Tong Xing entered the field to conduct a search. He then thought to himself, "It's coming." He reported his name and handed over a document and an examination token. The scholar first looked at the document of recognition, then at the portrait. There were words describing the person's physique and appearance. After confirming, it was time for the inspection. First, the examination basket had to be checked, followed by the brush, ink and paper. Even the steamed bun had to be torn apart. Pei Ziyun was experienced in this, and knew that the food in the examination hall must not be oily. Oily food would spoil easily, and when the examiner tore it apart, it would be tainted. If he ate something bad, he would be done for. Hence, he only brought fried pancakes and eggs. As for water, the examination hall would provide it. The next step was to take off his clothes and shoes. Even his hair had to be untied for inspection. Soon after, it was Pei Ziyun's turn. After a round of inspection, the student stamped his seal and shouted, "Take your seat according to your number." When Pei Ziyun received the admission ticket, he saw that other than his seat number, there was also a stamp on it. If there was any cheating during the examination, the examiner would be held accountable. The moment he entered the examination hall, he looked for his number. The number room was a row of small rooms, with a row opposite it. The distance between the two rows was about 5 meters. No matter how good one's vision was, one would not be able to see the other side. Inside there was a bed, a table and a stool. On the table, there were 3 candles and a brush washer. The conditions are better than the county examination, there's an extra bed. It was said that the county examination only took 1 day, the capital examination took 2 days, and the province examination took 3 days. Pei Ziyun placed his brush, ink and paper on the table. Opposite him was a 25 or 26-year-old youth. After the examinees had entered the examination hall, the magistrate gave his speech, and the examiners patrolled the examination hall. When everything was done, the cloud board rang, and the examiner handed out the examination papers. Pei Ziyun took the exam paper, and saw that besides the exam paper, there was also a stack of white paper, which served as a rough draft. Pei Ziyun lit a candle. The sun had just risen, and the room was still dark. He quickly looked through the exam paper from top to bottom. Only after confirming that the questions were clear and there were no mistakes did he relax. This was the experience of his previous life. If there was a problem, he had to ask it quickly and change the paper. But if he delayed, he would not be able to answer it. Who knew what was going on? When he finished reading, he thought to himself, "This is much more difficult than the county examination." In the county examination, there was a large proportion of the questions. MOE was a fill-in-the-blanks question. Needless to say, the sutra was a question written from memory. The examiner would select a page from the sutra and print a line from it on the test paper. Based on this line of text, the examinee would have to fill in the relevant context. In the capital examination, there was still the questions. However, there was only 1 roll of paper. There were only 5 questions for the questions and 20 questions for the scriptures. The ratio was much lower. What was tested was memory. The original owner's memory was not bad, and with the help of the old elementary scholar, Pei Ziyun was able to memorize the book without any questions. Next, there was clear calculation and clear law. This dynasty is much more practical than the ancient dynasty I came from. Clear calculation was mathematics, and clear law was understanding the basic laws. Although the proportion was not large, it showed that the examinees were not limited to the 4 books and 5 classics. But it won't be difficult for me. Forget about the calculation, clear law was a memory problem. The original owner's memory had solved it. Let's settle these first. By this time, the sky had already brightened. Looking up, he saw that the student opposite him was slow in thinking and didn't know whether he should answer the question or not. Smiling, he sharpened his brush and ink, and immediately filled in the blanks on the draft. After filling in the blanks, he checked them again and then wrote them down on the draft word by word. For this kind of examination, whoever can write it down on the script without thinking is either a genius or a fool. After finishing the question, Pei Ziyun heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that his back was slightly sweaty and hurriedly took out a towel to wipe it off. He noticed that the youth opposite him was pale and looked exhausted. It's noon. In the blink of an eye, it was noon. Pei Ziyun drank some water and ate some fried pancake. He then peeled an egg and ate a piece of salted lean meat. The food was not warm, but he could not ask for more. After eating, he rested for a while before looking at the next question. Next is the meaning of the scriptures. There are 3 important questions. The meaning of the scriptures was a discussion that revolved around the meaning of the book. Pei Zi-yun looked at the first question: empty, the people are incapable; majestic, the people are successful, the people are brilliant. This question is well written. Pei Zi-yun thought to himself. This was what Confucius had said in the Analects of Confucius. He said that Yao was a great man. However, with the knowledge of the elementary scholar, he had an answer. The core of this question is to praise the achievements of the ancient sages. The first paragraph is to point out what Yao had done, and which sages he had used to achieve great things. The extension is to say that the ancestors of the dynasty were wise and powerful. They also wanted to express their loyalty and support the emperor. With this, the question was solved. Let's do it in one go. To solve the question, one had to be concise and comprehensive. The essay had to be eloquent and majestic. Pei Zi-yun thought about it and wrote it down in one go. After he finished writing, he placed the draft aside and moved on to the next question. Old friends do not abandon each other if they have no major problems. They do not ask for anything from one person. The meaning of this question was clear. The Duke of Zhou had told his son, the Earl of Lu, that if old friends did not do anything wrong, they should not abandon them. When Pei Zi-yun saw this question, he couldn't help but slap his own forehead. Pa! A loud sound was heard, attracting the attention of the people in front of him. Even the patrol officer looked over. Don't be too proud, don't be too proud. The elementary scholar was at home. He did not pass the high scholar examination. His only thought was that the higher-ups would not abandon them and not ask for anything from them. He had written this question many times before and could just plagiarize it. His luck was so good that he could cry. When Pei Zi-yun looked at the question, he had several essays in his mind. He could not stop writing. He did not add any points to the essay, and it was done in one go. After blowing the ink dry, Pei Zi-yun nodded his head in satisfaction. He thought to himself, I did not spend much effort on this essay. It's just that writing it by hand is tiring. Just like before, he placed the draft aside and looked at the third question. Water, fire, metal, wood, earth, and grain. The last question is indeed the most difficult. Pei Zi-yun frowned as he analyzed. This question was rather difficult and came from the Book of Books. Water can irrigate, fire can cook, metal can cut, wood can grow, earth can reproduce, and grain can nurture. These are known as the 6 prefectures, and are used by nature to nurture all living things. All these can be extended to the phrase, as long as one does not violate the farming season, the grain cannot be eaten. This describes the importance of farming, and further extends to the phrase, virtue lies in good governance, and governance lies in nurturing the people. This is where the virtues of the sage are reflected, and this is only cultivation. After Pei Zi-yun had solved the question, he sighed and continued writing. This time, his speed was not as fast as before, but it was not slow either. He rubbed his eyes and realized that it was already dusk. Pei Zi-yun felt dizzy, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. He laid the draft paper flat, but did not copy it. The sky had already darkened, so he lit a candle. The entire examination hall was filled with the smell of candles, and the officials also lit up the torches in the examination hall. The chief examiner had his hands clasped behind his back as he led a group of examiners around. Pei Zi-yun was already hungry, but did not care about it. He wolfed down his food. The chief examiner looked at him and could not help but smile. Pei Zi-yun lowered his head and pondered. When the examiners had finished their rounds, Pei Zi-yun calculated the time. Today was only the first night, and he could wait till tomorrow to copy it. Seeing that the papers had already dried, he folded them and blew out the candle. He then lay down on the wooden bed and covered himself with a thin blanket. Before he fell asleep, He glanced at the youth opposite him, and saw that the youth was still working on his questions. He then closed his eyes and fell asleep to the sound of the paper flipping. Having the plum blossom is indeed different. Pei Zi-yun did not know why, or perhaps it was the side effect of receiving the plum blossom in his dreams, but as long as he wanted to sleep, he would fall asleep within a few breaths. This time, even though he was in the examination hall, it was the same. After lying down for a few minutes, he started snoring softly. At this point, the examiner happened to be making his rounds, and was speechless. The atmosphere in the examination hall was extremely tense. Although some people knew that they had to rest up, most of them were tossing and turning in their beds, causing their beds to creak. Yet this person was able to sleep so peacefully. The examiner did not know if he had a card up his sleeve, or if he was just a broken jar. Chapter 15. When he woke up, the sun had already risen. Most of the candidates had already woken up, and there was a rustling sound everywhere. Pei Zi-yun stood up and stretched his body. He followed the officials to the toilet and returned to his room. He drank some water, holding it in his mouth for a while before swallowing. After finishing the biscuit and the egg, Pei Zi-yun felt extremely energized. He then went to check on his draft and looked through it carefully. He confirmed that he had solved the 3 main questions yesterday without any mistakes. He couldn't help but sigh. If he still couldn't become an elementary scholar after this, then there must be something wrong with him. Following that, he began to copy word by word. It was not until noon that Pei Zi-yun had finished copying all 3 questions. Next is the last question, poetry. To be honest, regardless of whether it is practical knowledge or the Confucian classics, poetry is not important. It can only reflect one's literary talent. Hence, it became the last question. I can only say that if one writes well, it will give them extra points. Pei Zi-yun was not a great poet, but he had poems in his memory. How could there be exactly the same poet in both worlds? Looking at the title, Early Spring, Pei Zi-yun paused. This was very familiar, so familiar that it gave him a headache. It was not that he could not think of it, but which one should he choose? His thoughts ran wild as he stared at the title. After a while, Pei Zi-yun finally decided, then I shall copy Han Yu. He is from the Tang dynasty, and the poetry of the Tang dynasty is the most valuable, unlike the later dynasties where poetry was not popular. Moreover, this person was promoted to the assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, and was given the title of Minister of Rights, with the title. Thinking about this, Pei Zi-yun heaved a sigh of relief. This time, he did not need to write a draft, but directly started writing. Early spring, the light rain on the streets of heaven is soft, the color of the grass is nowhere to be seen. The best thing about spring is that the whole city is filled with flowers and willows. After he finished writing, Pei Zi-yun felt his body relax. He checked the paper again and again to see if he had made any mistake. He then looked around and saw that the candidates were still engrossed in their writing, their faces were pale. He had finished earlier and shouted, "Hand in." The official was surprised. "The sky is not dark yet and you've already finished?" Pei Zi-yun then replied, "I've finished writing." The official didn't dare to be negligent and called for the examiner. The examiner glanced at the script and saw that it was filled to the brim. He then nodded his head and said, "Let him pass." These examination papers all required the names to be pasted on. There would be a specialist who would make a copy of everyone's paper. After the examiners had finished correcting the papers and selected a certain number of people, only then could they look at the original paper. At that time, if the handwriting was good, they would get extra points. Now, even the examiner could not look at the paper too much. Pei Zi-yun came out of the examination room. The atmosphere in the examination room was getting more and more depressing. He really didn't want to stay in this place anymore. It was said that you could leave in advance for the county test, but for the province test, you had to stay for the whole 3 days. Furthermore, as he was copying, he noticed an examinee being carried out of the room. It was an old student with white hair. He was crying and begging to go home. Pei Ziyun looked on coldly from the side, feeling a little sad. That was how the imperial examination was. If you didn't pass this exam, you would end up like this. Other than those who were extremely lucky or talented, to be able to pass the elementary scholar, high scholar and grand scholar exams, one had to go through a few battles. Hence, when he walked out of the room, Pei Ziyun felt exhausted and relaxed. After passing the county test, he would be an elementary scholar. He would be able to officially become a scholar and complete the task given by the plum blossom. As he walked out of the door, Pei Ziyun saw a sea of heads outside. Other than the family members of the scholars, there were also servants and a large number of coachmen. These were all means of transportation. Many of the examinees had fallen ill from exhaustion. Even if they did not fall ill, they would still stagger under the pressure. Naturally, they needed to be transported. Pei Ziyun was not in such a state, but he didn't want to walk back. He waved his hand and a bullock cart came up to him. Pei Ziyun then said, "Shun Feng in." "All right, please have a seat." After a bumpy journey back to the inn, he noticed that the inn was well prepared. The moment he saw Pei Ziyun, the owner shouted, "Bring hot water." Pei Ziyun immediately took a hot bath. When he came out, he was served meat porridge. Just as he was about to drink it, he saw the examinees returning. Tang Jin's face was pale. When he saw Pei Ziyun, he hurriedly walked over and bowed. Pei Ziyun was surprised and said, "Brother Tang, there's no need to be so polite." Tang Jin had a shy look on his face as he said, "It's all thanks to you scolding me out of my stupor a few days ago. I went back to my room and studied hard. When it was time for the examination, I saw that there was a question that I had been studying for the past few days. That's why I came to thank Brother Pei." "Haha, there's such a thing? This is Brother Tang's good fortune." Pei Ziyun laughed as he spoke. This wasn't a lie. This person was indeed lucky. He even managed to get a question. After finishing his porridge, he saw that a few more examinees had returned. He didn't care anymore and went back to his room to lie down on his bed. Within moments, he had fallen asleep. School, high court, the soldiers were still lining up, and had to wait for all the examinees to finish before they could be let in. The East Chamber was for transcribing, receiving and sealing the papers. The West Chamber was for reading and serving. The official who received the papers brought them to the sealing room. The official who sealed the papers would then send them to the transcription room for the scribe to make a copy. When the transcription was completed, the transcription and the original paper would be sent to the West Chamber. There would be an official who would check the transcription and the original paper. If there were no mistakes, the official would keep the original paper and send the transcription to the High Court. The High Court was separated by a curtain. Papers were presented from the outside, while the officials inside read the papers. It was separated by a small screen and looked like an office. Once the officials in each chamber were satisfied, they would mark the paper and pass it to the room official. If the room official was satisfied, he would mark the paper and pass it to the vice examiner. If the vice examiner was satisfied, he would mark the paper and pass it to the main examiner. The main examiner would then make the final decision. At this point, the few stars in the night sky hung in the sky. The room was lit by candles, and every single one of them was very thick, illuminating the entire room. The room was very simple. There were only a few tables and chairs, and the tables were filled with papers. The main examiner, Yi Xianggao, was a principal student. He was about 50 years old, with white hair and a white beard. He looked at the examiner and said, "Today, all of you will be marking the papers. Do not forget the hard work of the past, and do not forget the expectations of the imperial court. All of you must read the papers clearly. If there are any mistakes, not only me, even the Ministry of Rights will not let you off." The examiner replied, "Yes, receive the papers." The examiners were all instructors. First, they had to memorize the meaning of the book, the scriptures, the calculations, and the laws. The examiners read the papers very quickly. Indeed, after a short while, one of the examiners shook his head. "There's a mistake in the 5th question. Such a question, even a scholar can answer it correctly. If this person made a mistake, he will be dismissed." As he said this, he tossed the paper into the pile of papers. This time there were 2,700 papers in the prefectural examination. Moe, Taijing, Ming Xuan and Ming Lu only missed a few mistakes. There were more than 10 examiners in multiple rooms looking at them. In less than 2 hours, a gong was heard and the front papers were all read. "Your Excellency, there are 2,741 papers, and there are 391 of them. The first half of the papers had errors and were demoted. The demoted papers might not be completely hopeless. Once the other papers were finished, the examiners would look at their later papers. But unless the later papers were exceptional, the chances were slim. The remaining 2,350 papers enter the examination of the major questions. The main examiner, Yi Xianggao, said as he sat up straight. Yes. The examination of the major questions was much slower. Deep into the night, one of the examiners yawned. Even if there were many examiners, reading so many words would cause one to feel dizzy. He held the paper in his hands and patiently read through it. He was unhappy. What's written this time? He then tossed it into the pile of discarded papers. When he saw the next paper, he was energized and smiled. Not bad. Reading it is like drinking wine. He then carefully circled the paper. This was middle school, and he wanted to put the paper down, but he was reluctant. So many papers are useless. Let me read this one again. He read it from beginning to end and realized something. He then sighed, rare. At the corner of the paper, he wrote the words, highly recommended. Since this was written, the examiner would look at it carefully. Before long, the paper was sent to the examiner. If the examiner was as tired as a dog, then the examiner would be a cat. He only needed to look at the paper with the circle. The examiner was not tired, and looked at the paper with an expressionless face. He then raised his head and looked at the examiner. This paper was recommended by you. Highly recommended? Yes. The examiner was silent for a long time before drawing a circle on the paper. He then wrote, "The true meaning of the words is old, and can be considered as an essay." When the examiner saw this, he was shocked. He then saw the examiner telling a scribe, "Send this paper to the vice-examiner." At this point, there weren't many papers with circles, and even fewer with 2 circles. The vice-examiner picked up the paper and looked at the comments before smiling. "So there's a good paper?" When he finished reading, he was silent for a long time. He then drew another circle and sent it to the vice-examiner. The vice-examiner saw that there were 3 circles on the paper. This was an essay that the examiner and the vice-examiner had all agreed on. He then read through the paper. After a long time, the vice-examiner fell into deep thought. "How is this essay?" the vice-examiner asked. The chief examiner paused for a long time before saying, "This person's literary style is experienced. There is nothing strange about it. There is some elegance to it. It is pure and honest. Just based on his literary style alone, he has the qualifications to become a high scholar. In this prefectural examinations, he can at least be in the top 3. It's just that he seems a little lonely, and also a little remorseful. I'm afraid the examinee is not young anymore." The vice-examiner paused for a moment before understanding. What a pity! Although the imperial court looked at the essays and not the person, they still looked at the person. The imperial court selected you because they wanted you to be a loyal official. The examiners selected you because they wanted you to be a teacher and take care of each other in the future. No matter what, if you are old, you will be discriminated against. You are already 40 or 50 years old. If you are selected, how many years can you last? Hence, the older you are, the lower the chances of being selected. Many of the old scholars and elementary scholars did not have much of a chance. The essay had a lonely air about it. It was just that the essay was too good, and the vice examiner was not satisfied. Then I'll be demoted? This essay is like this, demoting him is too harsh. The vice examiner was silent for a long time before saying, "Place him in the middle of the second roll." Chapter 16. Early morning. Zhang Jieyu and Yu Qiushan were sitting on the second floor. In front of them was a stone table. The stone table was only about 1.5 feet tall. On the stone table was a jade plate. On the jade plate was a jade pot and a few teacups. Beside them were a few praying mats, 2 of which were occupied by the 2 of them. When the sun rose, Zhang Jieyu could be seen sitting quietly. He seemed to be cultivating his spiritual wisdom and understanding the Tao. At this point, there was a trace of white qi around his body. Yu Qiushan was drinking tea when he saw the white qi around his disciple. This was the qi of an elementary scholar. He could not help but sigh. This Tao of qi is really deep and profound. I was thinking about you during the imperial examinations. Who would have thought that there would be results so soon? This is really a good thing. With this elementary scholar title, the tribulations of humans will be resolved. Zhang Jieyu seemed to be cultivating his spiritual wisdom and had sealed his 6 senses. Hence, he did not hear Yu Qiushan's words. The moment the purple qi appeared, he started inhaling and exhaling. After 3 breaths, it disappeared. Yu Qiushan picked up the jade pot and poured a cup of tea. The tea that came out was red in color and had a slight fragrance. Zhang Jieyu opened his eyes and raised his eyebrows as he smelled the fragrance. Yu Qiushan laughed. "Jieyu, come and sit." Zhang Jieyu took the tea, took a sip and said, "Really refreshing. Wealth, land, techniques and companions, the ancients did not deceive me." Yu Qiushan sighed. "Your elementary scholar title has been ruined. In this world, wealth is the most important." Yu Qiushan sighed. "Look at this curtain, the wooden table, the copper stove, the screen, the mat, the praying mat and the tea you just drank. Which one of them is not wealth? In this world, although the paradise has left the world, Black Altar Sex Qianji Mountain, Jizhen Sex Shiping Mountain, Yuanji Sex Qingbao Mountain, which one of them is not a famous mountain? Not in this world? Only when there is a mountain can there be a paradise. As for paradise, even if it is my sex paradise mountain, it is still a mountain. Hence, immortals are also mountain people. It's just that this mountain requires a spiritual vein. Hence, in this world, there are less than 100 of them. As long as there's a mountain in the world, you can't occupy it and become king. You have to be conferred and recognized by the human sovereign to avoid trouble. Do you know that without this spiritual mountain, you're a rogue cultivator and can only become a ghost immortal? Disciple naturally knows that there are 5 levels of immortals: ghost immortal, human immortal, earth immortal, celestial immortal, and heavenly immortal. If you are a loose cultivator, even if you manage to cultivate all 5 qis, you will only be able to live for 120 years. After you die, you will only become a ghost immortal. Zhang Jieyu's handsome face was a little pale as he sighed. There's a saying in the scriptures: if a cultivator doesn't have the right place, it's like planting 5 grains in the midst of sand and stones, then he won't be able to succeed. Although he has the bones of ascension, when he obtains the spiritual ruins of the blessed land, then he can transform. Although the accumulated virtue is the soil, the accumulated merits are the wings. If one does not follow the proper path, the devil destroys the merit, there is no way to achieve the Tao. Only with blessed lands can there be earth immortals. Only with grotto heavens can there be sky immortals. This means that even if you have an immortal bone, without a blessed land, you will not be able to become an earth immortal. Our sect has a blessed land, and there are earth immortals. However, why did Master come so early in the morning? Your disciple guessed that Master did not mean to say these words. Yuchio Shan laughed out loud and said, "Out of the 13 disciples under my wing, you are the one I like the most. You are so young and yet you have such wisdom. I have not even said a word, and you have already guessed my intentions. There is a limit to the number of blessed lands. I hope that you can become a core disciple and become an earth immortal. If not, you will be able to obtain the manual. However, to become an earth immortal, you have to stand out from the crowd. Currently, there is one thing that you need to do. If you succeed, you will be able to show off within the sect." "Yes, thank you, Master, for your guidance. I presume that the list of new disciples has already been decided?" "The elementary scholar has been decided, and so have they. Look, this is the name list. You just need to invite the people on the name list. Silver Dragon Temple outside the city has our outer sect disciples. When the time comes, you will bring them there. As for how to subdue them, Master will have to see your method. You have to know that unless you become a true monarch, you will not be able to leave the secular world. These outer and inner sect disciples are the wings of the sect, and cannot be underestimated. Yes, your disciple understands. Without the outer and inner sect disciples, even if we have a blessed land, we will not be able to protect it." Zhang Jieyu replied. Shun Feng in Pei Ziyun had just finished his breakfast and was reading in his room. His spiritual roots had not been formed, and he could not cultivate. Since he had nothing better to do, he decided to stay in his room and read. "I've thought about it carefully. In this examination, I didn't make any mistakes in current affairs, strategy, or poetry. I didn't offend the Emperor. I don't think I'll be in the top 3, but I'll definitely be in the top 2. However, I still feel uneasy. I wonder why." Pei Ziyun thought of his mother in Snail Village, and Yi Suer in Peach Blossom Origins Monastery. His heart was in turmoil, and he could not calm down. He turned around a few times, and looked at the essay he had written for the examination. He heaved a sigh of relief, as though he had understood something. "So that's how it is. I have received the old elementary scholar's essay. His essay is good, but it has not been able to hit the mark for a long time. I have brought it out in my brush as well. The Great Su Dynasty is like the birth of the sun. I'm afraid this is a taboo. No matter how good the essay is, it does not hit the mark." At this point, someone knocked on the door. "Ai, it's Brother Tang." It was Tang Zhen, who had always been a gentleman. He smiled and said, "Brother Pei, you've rested for 2 days. You have to go out for a walk today." Pei Ziyun took the invitation card and opened it up to take a look. He saw that the cover of the invitation card was covered with fine lines. There were a few words written on it, flying dragons and flying phoenixes. It was an invitation from a poetry society, and the venue was at Wangjiang Restaurant, which wasn't too far from the inn. Pei Ziyun thought for a moment, and realized that he was in a state of shock, and couldn't read any poems. Furthermore, he couldn't be too unreasonable. Hence he said, "Of course." He called for a waiter to bring him hot water to wash up and changed into a set of washed clothes. In less than a quarter of an hour, he walked along the main road from the inn to Wangjiang Restaurant. From afar, he could see a tall building by the side of the river. It was 5 stories tall and had glazed tiles. As he neared, he saw a huge river flowing by the side of Wangjiang Restaurant. There were several small boats floating on the river. This Wangjiang Restaurant and Lake Mirror Restaurant are the 2 largest restaurants by the river. However, Lake Mirror Restaurant is newer. When he reached the entrance of Wangjiang Restaurant, he saw a scholar standing at the entrance. He was dressed in a long white robe and had a gold-embroidered belt. He held a folding fan in his hands and welcomed Pei Ziyun. Before he reached the entrance, he saw the scholar approaching. "So it's Brother Pei. Welcome, welcome. I still remember Boss Banquet. Brother Pei's poem was very charming. Hence, I invited Brother Pei. I hope Brother Pei won't be offended." As the scholar finished speaking, he led Pei Ziyun up the stairs to the top of the restaurant. Pei Ziyun couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. He then looked up and saw that the scenery was beautiful. The river flowed without end and disappeared into the vast water. He couldn't help but think of an old poem from his previous life. Coincidentally, he was in such a situation. He couldn't help but recite, "I can't see the ancients before me, and I can't see the successors after me." But the last line was too melancholic and didn't fit the scene. He hurriedly stopped himself. The last line of the poem, "Tears fall from my eyes," was the most important turning point of the poem. He was talking about how he had talent but wasn't recognized. He was still young, and the results for the examinations had not been released yet. How could he be sad about not being recognized? He stopped and pretended that the poem was over. He then said softly to himself, "The poem is over, I shall do the last line another day." Good, it's a good poem. It's just that it's missing the last line. What a pity. Pei Ziyun heard a voice ring out. He turned around and saw someone standing up with a jug of wine in his hands. He poured a cup of wine and served it to him. It was Zhang Jieyu. Zhang Jieyu was dressed in a green robe, with a red belt around his waist. He wore a pair of old boots, and didn't look luxurious at all. However, he looked extremely handsome, and made people forget about him. Pei Ziyun had a complicated look in his eyes as he thought to himself, "He's so suave. Who would have thought that he's a disciple of Holy Jail Sect?" After hearing Brother Pei's 3 lines just now, I felt that they were very charming. It's just that Brother Pei's mood has run out. I've toasted 3 cups to help Brother Pei's mood. Zhang Jieyu smiled, looking extremely magnanimous. Good. He could hear the students around him cheering him on. Just now, they had seen the owner of the Poetry Society leading a young man up the stairs. They felt that he looked familiar, but the surrounding students didn't pay much attention to him. They were all busy reciting poems. When they heard the young man recite a poem, they heard the first line and laughed. When they heard the second line, they were somewhat surprised. When they heard the third line, they felt that the poem was majestic and majestic. It was just that the last line was missing. When they saw Zhang Jieyu walking up to him, they all cheered him on. From the memories of his previous life, Zhang Jieyu had never treated the original owner as an enemy. They had only had some small conflicts. Zhang Jieyu's actions had caused the original owner to waste several years of his life. Since he couldn't vent his frustrations, he took the wine and drank 3 cups. The wine tasted bitter, but he had no choice but to swallow it. After walking a few steps, he made up his mind not to say anything. He pretended that his mood had run out. He sighed and laughed bitterly. "Today's poem has run out. I can't do it anymore." Zhang Jieyu could only sit down, and didn't try to persuade him. One of the students sighed, "This poem is majestic, but it's missing the last line. It's a pity. Why don't Brother Pei leave it here in this restaurant? We can add another poem in the future. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" At this point, the innkeeper carried some snacks up the stairs. A waiter carried a brush, ink and paper. What a coincidence. The innkeeper had arrived just as Pei Ziyun was talking about it. He even brought the brush, ink and paper with him. This was great. The student took the brush, ink and paper from the waiter and started grinding the ink. Seeing this, Pei Ziyun couldn't reject him anymore. He walked up and picked up the brush and started writing. Before long, he had written 3 lines on the paper. At this point, the innkeeper walked over and started reading, never seen before, never seen after, looking at the long and majestic world. As he read, he felt that it was a pity. Seeing that he didn't have a name for it, he asked, "But would young master please leave a name for the poem? I shall hang it here, and when young master has another line in the future, you can add on to it. But I think that with only 3 lines it can be passed down." Pei Ziyun couldn't help but laugh. Back on Earth, this poem had been passed down for thousands of years. It was just that it didn't fit the occasion. Hence, he didn't write it down. He picked up the brush and said, "Since it was written on Wangjiang Restaurant, I shall name it Wangjiang Restaurant." At this point there was a commotion downstairs. A Taoist came up and saw that there was wine and meat on the table. The innkeeper was thinking about the poem when he saw the sloppy Taoist in front of him. He was enraged. Where did this filthy Taoist come from? How dare he cause trouble in this restaurant? Pei Ziyun looked at this Taoist and felt that he looked familiar. One of the students said, "You sloppy Taoist, why do you only know how to eat and do nothing? You still want to eat meat and wine. Aren't you ruining the cultivation of a monk?" The Taoist picked up a jug of wine and gulped it down before saying, "Isn't the wine and meat passing through the intestines? The Tao lingers in the heart?" When the student heard this, he was enraged. "You Taoist, you're so unreasonable. You're spouting rubbish. Wine and meat passing through the intestines, why do you still need to follow the rules?" The innkeeper looked at the Taoist and shouted, "Waiter, why aren't you taking this bastard down to the officials?" Hearing this, Pei Ziyun had an idea. Just give him some wine and meat and let him go. This is a poetry meet, why should we spoil the harmony between us? When the innkeeper heard Pei Ziyun's words, he laughed and said, "Since young Master Pei has spoken up for us, we shall treat this Taoist to some food and wine. But not here." He then instructed, "Give this Taoist some food and wine and let him eat." When the Taoist saw this, he laughed and said, "You're all in trouble, yet you still don't know it." As he said this, he laughed and left. Pei Ziyun was slightly taken aback. He looked at Zhang Jieyu and saw that he didn't make a sound. Pei Ziyun was speechless. Others may not know, but I do. Zhang Jieyu is a disciple of Holy Jail sect. If this Taoist wants to play tricks on us, how can we tolerate him? Looking at the situation now, I'm afraid there's something fishy going on with this Taoist. There's something fishy about this trip as well. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.